great to see the Lockies doing live before lock as well. And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Thursday, November 18th. I am Josh Engelman. I am joined by Adam Scher, and we are here to break down 6 games, which to me is sort of like the perfect NBA slate. These games aren't the perfect NBA slate, but the size of the slate is perfect. Also, shout out to Yahoo Sports for being the presenting sponsor of this show. We will talk about them in a bit, but first, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live, but make sure you're hitting that like button because I've got Laffy coming in behind me, and the last thing I need him to do is talk a bunch of smack once he signs onto the stream. So let's start here. Adam, how are you?
I'm good. Looking forward to tonight. 6 basketball games, 11 hockey games, football. So, building the winning hockey lineups right now while we talk, and then, looking forward to the NBA.
Fantastic. It's going to be weird for me on this particular case. Normally, you're not building hockey lineups when we do these sorts of discussions. We're on the strategy show and you're not thinking about hockey. But for now, it's going to be a little bit different. I'll make sure to give you every single question I say twice.
Yeah, normally when I'm not listening, it's because I'm reading chat. This time it's going to be because I'm playing around in Fantasy Cruncher.
Yeah, trust me, man. I'm used to it at this point. Regardless of the excuse, it's all the same. You ready to do this?
Yeah.
All righty. Let's do it. And shout out to Greg Maluski. Welcome to Team Awesemo. And that's just me reading the screen, your name and the text underneath it. Golden State Warriors at the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Warriors are 9.5-point favorites in Cleveland, 209.5 total. So if you're a big Cleveland fan and you look at that and think that's a lot for us being at home, you're right. That's because most of your guys are out right now. On Golden State, everybody is available except for Andre Iguodala. That should be no real surprise. They were going to play 27 different dudes today, and we'll try to figure out if any one of them can become useful. For Cleveland, no Colin Sexton, no Lauri Markkanen, no Evan Mobley, no Jared Allen, no Lamar Stevens, no chance, probably. Let's start on the Golden State side, where Draymond Green is getting ownership on both sites, basically 18% across FanDuel and DraftKings. Jordan Poole is quite popular on FanDuel at 23%, only 9% on DraftKings. And then there's not much else coming in particular, very low ownership to Steph Curry, 11-1 on FanDuel, 11-8 on DraftKings. I think that low ownership is perfectly acceptable. Obviously, we're going to get to Curry, Green, Wiggins, and Poole. Those guys are sort of like the defaults of people that can show up in your lineup. We definitely need to touch on, can we get to anybody else? But let's talk about the regular guys first. What are you doing with the top end of Golden State?
Yeah, so starting with Steph, clearly if Steph is in a lineup, that's fine. You shouldn't redo your entire lineup. But that being said, I think it's going to be very difficult to get there for a couple of reasons. One, the value on this slate is not very good. So when you're talking about just really cheap guys, there's not going to be a ton that seem to offer a really high ceiling in terms of raw points, and there's plenty of mid-range options. So like a true stars and scrubs approach, I think is going to be kind of difficult. 2, you have Nikola Jokic, who is just a completely different tier of player, different tier of projections. So where I do pay up, I'm going to be pretty heavily prioritizing Jokic. It kind of just puts Curry in a situation where if I have a chalky lineup and have the money to spend up, maybe Curry makes his way in. But other than that, going to be difficult to prioritize him. I think Draymond looks fine at 6,700. You've been getting around 32 minutes in competitive games. There's the chance he picks up a couple of more minutes without Iggy tonight. But even if he plays around 32, he's over a fantasy point per minute guy. Curry being in is a benefit to Draymond. Greg and I had mentioned this morning that you could see Draymond drop off a little bit actually if Curry were out, but don't have to worry about that. And then, Jordan Poole, I think is okay. Not any sort of priority for me. Should play around 30 minutes. Damien Lee at 3,200. Not sure if you had mentioned him as one of the guys that we obviously could play, but he's been playing, 22-ish minutes the last couple of games off the bench. Yeah. Now you don't have Iggy. Not the best fantasy option, but he is 3,200 and I think likely to play around 22 minutes again.
He's 4K on FanDuel, so I wasn't paying attention to him basically at all. 3,200 on DraftKings with guard forward eligibility is a very different deal.
I forgot to mention Wiggins too, just in that group. He's fine also. He's very similar to Jordan Poole for me. We have seen him be a little bit more aggressive recently compared to what he was doing at the start of the year. That's obviously good to see. His usage rate since the start of November, just a completely random data point that I threw in there, but sure. It just seemed like it had been happening. So I just looked and it was up a couple of points. So, not to say that's gospel or anything, but it does seem like he's been a little bit more aggressive. For anyone that likes narratives, he's back in Cleveland, which tends to be a fun experience when you roster Andrew Wiggins. So take that for what it's worth. But I think he's a pretty neutral play, just like Jordan Poole.
So you're saying that Jordan Poole is a relatively neutral play, and I tend to agree on DraftKings. Do you have any thoughts on his 23% ownership on FanDuel?
What's his price?
56.
I mean, that's cheap, I think.
Yeah, it's a little. That ownership's a little high.
Yeah, like the actual ownership number would come down to, like obviously what the alternatives are. But if you just tell me Jordan Poole's $5,600, I say, oh, that's a really good value.
Okay, that works for me. Well, you briefly mentioned on Damien Lee and his $3,200 price tag, but what do we do with the rest of Golden State? Do we prepare with the idea that some of these guys could see a couple extra minutes in the fourth quarter in a potential blowout against Cleveland? Are we going to Otto Porter, Nemanja Bjelica, the cum bucket? What are we doing here today?
Yeah, so I mean, you mentioned the blowout piece. That's not something that I'm preparing around, but it's certainly part of the path to how potentially a cheap Golden State piece, gets you there in tournaments. It's certainly part of the range of outcomes, but I do like in larger field tournaments, kind of just mixing and matching these guys. I mentioned Damien Lee, he's getting the most ownership of the group, but Otto Porter Jr., 3,500, certainly a path to more minutes for him without Iguodala. I have him in for 18 minutes, but if he's playing well, it's not like it would be surprising if he picks up a couple of more minutes. Cum bucket though, Jonathan Kuminga, I'm really interested here. It's
I couldn't hold it in.
I love it. It's I really enjoyed how confused people seemed on Twitter earlier. But it's not safe. We have seen him, be a regular part of the rotation now, though, and it kind of seems like he's jumped ahead of Bjelica in the second half last game. But Bjelica only played in garbage time. Kuminga played a normal rotation. He's a good point per minute. Like he's a good fantasy producer on a per minute basis as well. And that's one thing that I typically really like in spots like this, because not only like if you put somebody in that is good at scoring fantasy points, you just have to get kind of lucky on their minutes. If you put in somebody that's not good at scoring fantasy points, you have to get lucky on the minutes, and then you need them to actually play at a high level as well. Kuminga, I think as long as he gets to like 20 minutes, which he may or may not, but if he gets to 20 minutes, he's likely to do really well at virtually no ownership at 3K. If he doesn't get to 20 minutes, he probably won't. But I think as long as the ownership's really low, I like mixing him in.
It's also such a better matchup for someone like Kuminga, where it's not like he's going up against high-end NBA talent if he's going to be out there. Like the Cavs are missing most of those relevant dudes. Dealing with Dean Wade, probably not the same sort of thing as having to deal with Evan Mobley might not be the best example since they're basically the same age, but you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, Evan Mobley's insanely good and Dean Wade's not.
Yeah. Well, he's also insanely better than Jonathan Kuminga, at least as of right now. But
yeah,
neither here nor there.
And I mean, what you're saying, like obviously that applies to Porter too. Like it wouldn't be surprising to anybody if Otto Porter just lights up the Cavs second unit either. But right. I do think I'd be setting a rule. So like I don't want lineups to have Damien Lee and Otto Porter or Kuminga or whatever. But I do like just sort of mixing in one of these cheap guys. Gary Payton at 3,900 fits that bill as well. Likely to play, like 18 minutes, but he's another good fantasy producer. And so if he just happens to be playing well, it's not like it would be shocking if Steve Kerr's like, oh, okay, 4 more minutes for Payton, 4 less for Damien Lee. Like it's all really, really fluid, I think, the way this bench rotation looks.
All right. Word to Big Bird in chat just said the 2 games Iguodala missed, Porter got 32 and 36. That can't be possible.
Almost positive it's not, because I based my minutes off of it earlier.
And maybe he means fantasy points, but I mean, Porter played 18 minutes in one of them.
Yeah.
Did he go for 32 and 18 minutes?
And either way, it wouldn't matter. Like Iguodala is, it's not like taking Iguodala off the floor is making Otto Porter like a star.
That's what they need to do. Unlock Otto Porter with sitting Andre Iguodala. Yeah. FanDuel points, not minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, just for the record, that is meaningless.
Well, I mean, it's meaningless as far as like trying to predict he's going to do it today. It's not meaningless in terms of that's exactly what I've been talking about for the last few minutes. Is none of these guys really are getting ownership. Damien Lee's getting 5%, Porter's at 1.5%, Kuminga's at 1%, Payton is at less than that. You can't really point to which one. Like most likely, all of these guys are going to play like 18 to 22 minutes. And it's just going to be who happens to have their shots fall and have, a few extra rebounds bounce to them, or they run into steals or whatever. But the point being, one of these guys against this Cavs team can certainly just go nuts at a dirt cheap price tag and virtually no ownership.
Yeah. I don't I don't think I'm going to be projecting Otto Porter at a 1.77 fantasy point per minute rate today, rivaled only by Nikola Jokic. Seems like it might just be some hot shooting. Who knows? Anything else we want to talk about for Golden State? I think they're one of the easier teams to sort of look at because it's just like they've got 4.5 guys, obviously DraftKings for Damien Lee, and then cross your fingers and hope on the rest of it.
Yeah. Do you have any like real preference between those bench guys or just all the same?
Well, on FanDuel, I have the preference of none of them because none of them are super cheap other than Moses Moody at the flat minimum. They're all in the 4s. So no preference there. The cum bucket at the flat 3K just stands out most. And obviously, Damien Lee is the easiest one to get to, shooting guard, small forward, 3,200. And Jameis Boyce, yes, it is absolutely meaningless that he scored 32 fantasy points in 18 minutes. I promise you that.
Yeah, that's the same for me. Like they all project about the same for me. Kuminga's the cheapest. Lee is not that much more expensive and has guard forward eligibility, so he's number 2 for me. Porter is then the next cheapest, followed by Peyton.
I mean, it's probably like an okay spot for Kevon Looney, but it's a center spot, and we know how that
I wasn't even
shakes out.
including Looney in that conversation.
Yeah, like if it's just going to be Ed Davis, Taco Fall, Kevin Love, Dean Wade, like he's not running into anything that's going to be slowing him down at all. Let's go to the Cleveland side where it gets a bit more complicated here. Darius Garland looks fantastic across both sites. 6K on FanDuel, 6,800 on DraftKings. Isaac Okoro is 4,300 on FanDuel, 4,900 on DraftKings. Unfortunately, he looks pretty good to me. Dean Wade is getting like 15% ownership across both sites. Had a price jump big time on FanDuel. He's 4,500 now, so I don't have to play nearly as much as I did yesterday. Ricky Rubio pulling about 24% ownership across both sites. I think all 4 of those guys look pretty good. Okoro for 4,900 on DraftKings is starting to get to a point where he's a little expensive. And then we have to think a little bit at least about Ed Davis, 3,500 on FanDuel, 3,600 on DraftKings. He is getting some ownership. What stands out most to you from Cleveland?
So we don't have a starting lineup here, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, because that is one thing that I want to keep an eye on. I'm assuming they use the same lineup they did last time. And if they do, I'm going to just assume Ed Davis matches Kevon Looney's minutes, which would give him like 18 to 20 minutes. And then I'm assuming Love plays 20 to 22 behind him. And then the rest is, basically this a similar rotation to what we got last time. Maybe a little bit more playing time for Chetty, but still not enough for him to justify a $6,100 DraftKings price tag. But if Chetty were to replace Davis in the starting lineup and they just start small, then 6,100 is still expensive, but I think that it would signal that you're going to get a lot of minutes for Chetty. You're potentially going to get more minutes for Valentine in small lineups. I would assume if Davis doesn't start that he just DNPs and you get a lot of small ball from Cleveland. So that is something I'm paying attention to. But Ed Davis himself, I'm not really that interested in getting to. He's not a great fantasy point per minute guy. He takes up a center spot. This isn't a matchup where I expect him to have to play a lot of minutes or anything. So not really too interested there. I do like the backcourt. Ricky Rubio, 6,900 on DraftKings. Garland, 6,800. We saw 33 minutes from Rubio last time out, about 38 or 39 from Garland. I think expecting Rubio to land in that 33 to 34 minute range makes sense. I think that game he played 37 against Boston was a little bit fluky, but he's been the better fantasy producer out of the 2 guards as well. When you look at his numbers alongside Darius Garland and vice versa, Garland loses usage. He loses assist numbers. Rubio is just doing it all while he's out there. So I think they're both fine. I prefer Rubio, especially in tournaments, because from running some stuff earlier, I think that people are viewing Garland and Rubio as the same.
Whoa.
When
Tyler Hero out.
Oh, wow.
Sorry. Didn't see that one coming. It really just caught me off guard. Sorry. Garland, Rubio, and the comparison.
Yeah. So right now, for example, we have Darius Garland projected for 27% ownership. We have Rubio at 24%. Just from some stuff I was looking at earlier, that's kind of what I was expecting. It seems like the field is not really they're just viewing them as the same player and they're at the same price point. I think Rubio is the better fantasy option. So if their projected ownership comes in similarly in tournaments, I would like to get the more Rubio and less Garland.
Where do you have their minutes?
I gave Garland 36 and Rubio 32.
Okay. And you like Rubio more than Garland at that number?
Yeah, Garland's a 0.95 fantasy point per minute guy in the games without Sexton. It's backed up by the numbers pretty much no matter how you look at it. He's like a 21% usage guy when he's on the floor with Rubio, and then he gets a lot more shot volume, obviously, when he's not. Rubio's about a 1.15 fantasy point per minute guy. So I think, those minutes, you could get 38 from Garland. You could also get 34 from Rubio. Like, it's all relative. I think Garland plays several minutes more than Rubio on average, but I think Rubio is the better fantasy producer. So I have them close. I think Garland is a good play, but if their ownership is similar, I prefer Rubio.
That's fair. I have them super close too. I have Garland by a fantasy point in 2 additional minutes. Wouldn't be surprised if Garland played 38, played 40 yesterday, which is kind of wild.
26.9% usage rate for Garland in the games without Sexton. Rubio's at 30.6.
That's the tricky part for me. I don't know what to do with that number. What do you actually project it at?
I mean, I buy into it because he's been higher than, like, no matter what you look at, he's higher than Garland this year.
Okay. I have Rubio in for 26 today. Usage, that is.
Then, but do you also have Garland there?
28.
Okay, see, I can't do that. Like, if I have Rubio at 26, I have to have Garland at like 23.
Okay. Interesting balance there. I don't know what to do with Ricky Rubio. Maybe his last stint in Minnesota has just like soured me to his talent, and I need to like snap back out of it. I mean, look, I still like Ricky Rubio a lot. I have like 20+% of him. I think he projects really well. I don't have anything else to add. Another good thing, I don't know why I'm advocating so hard for Garland. Also has shooting guard eligibility, which I guess helps mildly. But either way, I like Rubio and I like Garland. Where do you land on the Wades and Okoros of the world?
Just to kind of finish that out, 205 minutes, Rubio and Garland alongside each other without Sexton. 25.2% usage rate for Rubio, 22% for Garland. And then you expect their minutes to be staggered. So that's why both of them would be a little bit higher. So again, like I think the
is Sexton on for any of that?
No, Sexton's off.
Okay. Just make sure.
So like, I mean, you can, the actual number can be, can be debated, but I don't really see any way that Rubio doesn't project for more usage than Garland. As far as the other guys, Wade's okay at 4,200. He played 38 minutes last game. He doesn't do anything when he's out there, but it's an okay value. Assume he's going to get some minutes at center here in the small matchup. Not going out of my way to get to him though. Same for Okoro, playing huge minutes. That was good to see just because, he had come back from injury not that long ago. So good to see him fully unleashed. His usage rate actually has been up a little bit in the games that he's played too, from where he was in the past. Still only about 18%, but at least, up a little bit from what we've seen from him before. I think at 4,900, like you said, he's getting a little expensive, but still, viable as a last piece in at relatively low ownership.
I can't see getting to Kevin Love. Price is just too high unless he just happens to walk into 30 minutes today that we don't expect. To me, that's it's not something I'm interested in. Chetty 6K and 6,100 for reasons that don't make a ton of sense to me. So he's essentially unplayable. You'd have to project him as like a 34-minute starter for him to even sniff that.
Unplayable like Giannis or unplayable?
Yes, unplayable like the guy that dropped 47 yesterday. Unplayable. I can't imagine getting to a single lineup with Chetty Osman today.
Yeah, if he starts, I could see him as like a last piece in type.
Yeah, totally different if he's in the starting lineup. He's still not a good play even at that point, just because of that price tag. But at least you can do it then. But assuming that it's the same starting lineup, that becomes basically impossible at 6,100. We good here?
Yep.
All righty then. Let's talk a little bit about the schedule for the rest of the day. This is easy. Coming up immediately after this, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, NBA Live Before Lock. They'll go for an hour. But 15 minutes before that show ends, NFL Live Before Lock will also kick off at the same time because we've got Pats Falcons going on tonight in the NFL for Thursday Night Football. Plus, NBA ownership rankings are free, NFL showdown projections are free, and NHL ownership projections are free. Well, I guess we're going to have something to talk about here in this next game. Also, hit that like button. 1,600 people, 200 likes. That is a terrible ratio. I need some help here. If you haven't hit the thumbs up yet, do that now. We'll start with the Washington Wizards, who are 7-point underdogs in Miami, 206 total. No Spencer Dinwiddie in this one. We've got Bradley Beal, 25% owned on FanDuel at 8,700. He is 11% owned on DraftKings at 9,400. Normally, I understand that this becomes the other guy on the Wizards isn't playing game and you just jam in Bradley Beal. I feel like things are a little bit different with this team now that they actually have more talent on it. Where do you stand on Beal now?
And most importantly, they're playing at Miami, which is just a really brutal spot to be in. So yes. I think Beal looks better with Dinwiddie out than he would. I don't think that's really debatable. Agreed. But the matchup, it's mostly just the matchup for me, where it's just like he looks good. He has a ceiling, but he just doesn't look that good. He doesn't look as good as he would in a lot of other spots, given the matchup. He's got a 34% usage rate without Dinwiddie on the floor this year. That's up from about 30% alongside Dinwiddie. His assist percentage goes from 25% to 31.7%. He's averaged 1.02 DraftKings points per minute with Dinwiddie on this year, in part because of bad shooting, to 1.25 DraftKings points per minute. So he looks better, but also getting 11% ownership. That's about where I think he should be at. He still just doesn't really stand out to me that much here, given the matchup and given all of the alternatives on the slate. He still has a high ceiling. He's going to play a bunch of minutes. He's going to get up a bunch of shots, but just, kind of a guy at this price in this matchup.
Okay. I was hoping you said that. I didn't know if you were going to dig a little deeper on him and be like, I think he's going to have a 44% usage rate like we were seeing at times last year when Russ would leave the floor. But there's just too much additional talent now for him to go whole hog on the take every single shot. Understand why he's getting the ownership. We'll see where I actually end up. We've got Kyle Kuzma, 6,900, 6,600 across FanDuel and DraftKings. The most owned player in this game that isn't Bradley Beal is actually Raul Neto on DraftKings at 3,200. Talk to me about the relationship between Aaron Holiday and Raul Neto today. Obviously, we're just waiting on whether or not Holiday or Neto starts. My assumption is Holiday for right now.
Yeah, so I'm assuming Holiday too. He started for Dinwiddie when he was out. He started the games that Beal missed. I don't really view Dinwiddie or Beal being out as all that different. Like, Beal's going to run point tonight. Dinwiddie obviously runs point when Beal's out. So I'm assuming you're going to get Holiday. He is likely, if he's playing well, to give you around 30 minutes or so. But there's definitely negative correlation between him and Neto, because I expect it to basically be a hot hand situation down the stretch, where if Holiday's playing well, he can get those extra minutes. But if Neto plays well off the bench, there's no reason he can't close. We've seen it. We actually saw it the last game that Dinwiddie was out. We've seen it at times this year where Neto picks up a few more minutes. So I think if Holiday starts, assuming Holiday starts, he projects for more minutes, but Neto's the better per minute producer, especially when you're talking about a lot of Holiday's minutes coming alongside Beal. And Neto's coming when Beal's off the floor. That's going to benefit Neto's production as well. Neto also a little bit cheaper. So I don't have a really strong, lean between the two. I think that they're both reasonable sub 4K plays on a slate with limited value, but I would lean towards Neto just because he's a little bit less expensive and he is the better per minute guy, even though he's likely to play a few less minutes.
Are you looking at anybody else here? I guess we need to wait on the news for Daniel Gafford. He is questionable. On DraftKings, Montrezl Harrell is going to probably look pretty good if Gafford ends up out at 6,200. Montrezl Harrell is 7,600 on FanDuel, still viable at that point in time, but already priced up for reasons that I don't totally understand, because he has not been, they've been just sharing the minutes as of late. Do we have anything else here for Washington?
Yeah. So if Gafford's in, then it's kind of just the normal with Gafford and Harrell. They're both capable of putting up a really big night, but their minutes, they don't play enough minutes for you to really trust it. The only other thing I would point to is $4,400 KCP on DraftKings at 1% ownership. I think is actually pretty interesting here for a couple of reasons. One, they've used him at times this year as sort of like their primary on-ball defender. You could certainly see him play a couple of extra minutes, to try and slow down Jimmy Butler. But also, Wes Unseld mentioned after the game last night against Charlotte that Charlotte had switched to zone in the second half and that they had really struggled with it. So like Miami beat reporters have already been speculating on, how quickly Miami will switch to zone tonight. KCP is just one of those logical guys where, like, if they're going to shoot their way out of it, you could just see KCP get a couple of extra looks potentially. So not like a deal breaker or anything, not a huge reason to like him, but I just think that the combination of minutes and potentially, a little bit more in terms of usage than normal at 4,400 and no ownership is kind of appealing.
Squeak Diesel with the super chat said, "Hey, Josh and Adam, love the show. Boucher minutes, probably meaningless if I had to guess. I gave him 17.
That's not my guess.
Really? What do you think?
It depends on the starting lineup.
They hate him, so I assume he's just going to continue to not play. Where are you going with Toronto with Chris Boucher's minutes? Obviously, if Chris Boucher is starting, I have a very different feel for his minutes. But
I have Birch starting and Boucher playing 20.
I gave him 17. I've got Birch at 28. A couple more minutes to Siakam at the 5.
Yeah, I had 28 and 20.
We will get there in a bit.
And he played 24 minutes a week ago, by the way.
Yes, he did. Ken Birch was out for that, right?
One of them
no
was
Siakam too,
out.
and no
there were
Siakam.
guys out. I don't remember.
Yeah, no Siakam, no Birch. I don't know. We'll talk about it when we get to Toronto. Anything else for Washington?
No.
Clippers and Memphis. One of the few close games on this slate. Clippers are
wait. Just because I saw somebody bring it up in chat. Avdia fits into that like Golden State bench guy role where he projects for like 16 to 17 DraftKings points. He's probably going to suck, but his minutes have been up lately. They've liked what he's doing defensively, and that's kept him on the floor. So if good value doesn't open up, there's no reason if you're playing a lot of lineups not to have a little bit of Avdia.
There we go. Clippers in Memphis. We'll start with the Clippers. No Nick Batum for this one. No everybody else that had been out too. Incredible amounts of ownership coming in. Nope, we didn't go over Miami. Totally skipped Miami. Got you guys. Don't worry. We got this. Because we talked about because I mentioned Tyler Hero, I just wrote them off already. No Tyler Hero here for the Miami Heat. Got a sneaky suspicion we're going to be playing a bit more Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo than we were thinking before, and potentially Kyle Lowry. Are you ready for this? What do we do with Miami now?
Yeah, I was going to say adjusting this one on the fly to talk about it, but that's a lot of minutes and a lot of usage. Hero has really increased his usage this year, despite playing more minutes as well. So there's more usage potentially for Butler and Bam. I agree. You probably get a little bit more for Lowry too, just because like how much higher can Bam and Butler realistically go. Yeah. But then also who's taking those minutes? Like Duncan Robinson's already playing low 30s. So, maybe he plays like 34. Do we get another
Vincent season?
Yeah, I'll say, do we get another like 20 something minutes from Vincent and or Strus?
I gave Vincent 22. I have Strus at 20. Basically like a full split of the 4 with Strus and PJ Tucker.
Yeah, I think that's make it. So we got 21 minutes from Strus yesterday. Like, I guess we can kind of use yesterday as like a proxy because you had Lowry out and Hero in. Strus played 21. Vincent played 27.
Okpala get on the floor?
Okpala played in the first half, but not the second half.
Okay. 27% usage rate for Jimmy Butler with Hero off in 166 minutes. 29.5 for Bam in 147.
So that's actually lower for Butler, I think.
Yeah. I don't get the sense that I'm going to make that kind of change. It just doesn't make sense to me. Not to me. Oh,
you're back now.
Okay. I never left. So I would never lower Jimmy Butler's usage rate in this scenario.
Yeah,
no matter what that says. I will raise Bam's a bit for sure. So I'm going to get more of Bam Adebayo. Kyle Lowry, 18. So his has not really had an impact. I don't necessarily think that 18 is the most likely scenario for Kyle Lowry either, but does anybody else become relevant here? I don't know if this opens up anything other than the big 3. And then the obvious, like every once in a while, Duncan Robinson's going to make 8 threes.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at. I think it just makes the big 3 look better. I think that it makes it so Gabe Vincent, as a dart throw is fine, but still can't be too confident there.
Yeah, 22 minutes. He's probably not somebody I'm going to get to. I would probably need him to get to that like 27 that he had for it to be a thing. Interesting change here. I did not see that one coming. I just finished my crunch. Let me see if I can get this exported quickly and see if that changed anything. It didn't really, so I guess I don't have to.
I wouldn't play more than one of Strus, Martin, Vincent.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Yeah, kind of just picking names out of a hat as far as who has the better game, but they're all cheap. They all have a path to mid-20s in minutes.
Let's get to this Clippers-Memphis game where everybody for the Clippers is basically getting owned. Paul George, 15 to 30%, depending on the site. 16% for Reggie Jackson. 10 to 20 for Eric Bledsoe. 5 to 15 for Terrence Mann. 10 plus for Zubats. 10 for Kennard. 23 on FanDuel for Isaiah Hartenstein. Where are you going with the Clips?
Yeah, I think they all look pretty good here. Waiting on the Terrence Mann news still. He's listed as questionable. Have you seen anything leading one way or the other?
He warmed up for the game 2 nights ago and then ultimately didn't play. I have him in at this point because if he warmed up, then I just assume he plays.
Yeah, and they had kind of acted like it wasn't a big deal anyway. So yeah, I have him in too. I do think, I mean, obviously he has an impact because he's likely to play more than 30 minutes tonight if he's in. But I think Zubats, my interest level in Zubats does kind of depend on Mann. I like Zubats either way, but if Mann is out, it just makes it a lot less likely that they go small to close this game, just because they'd have fewer options. So it just made me feel a little bit more confident in Zubats. But either way, at 5,100, Zubats I think looks good. Kennard, I'm assuming, is going to start. He looks good. Terrence Mann looks fine. Yeah, like all this ownership makes sense. Paul George has been really, really good. The only issue I have with George is that he's $1,000 less than Jokic. There's not enough value on this slate, at least right now, for me to really think that I'm paying up for both guys in that many lineups. Yeah. But you do have, better positions for George with guard and forward eligibility. Only 17% ownership there. So yeah, I think he looks fine. Bledsoe looks good. I don't have any problems with any of these guys that are getting ownership.
Works for me. Yeah, I don't really have any major thoughts here. Like I'll end up being over and under on a couple of them, but I don't. It's all basically like fully ownership dependent. So I don't have any hot takes. Any one of those 7, I'm going to have a lot of. I have, I don't know, like 113 total percent of my ownership going to those 7 guys from the Clippers. That works for me.
Yeah. People in chat keep saying Beal's out. Beal is not out.
No, he's not. Please stop using DraftKings and FanDuel as your source of news. They don't care at all. Use us, please. Or anything else on Twitter, but not FanDuel and DraftKings. And then we go to Memphis, where they're like sort of interesting, but sort of not. Here's the ownership on Memphis on DraftKings. Morant, 12. Brooks, 13. Jackson, 13. Bain, 17. Adams, 13. Anderson, 11. And that's exactly how I feel about all of those guys relative to salary. Do you have any immediate thoughts for Memphis?
No, not really. The only overarching thought I have is that Dillon Brooks being back makes all these guys look a little bit less interesting. Like you can still obviously roster John Morant, but he's seen his usage rate drop a few points since Brooks been back. That's to be expected. Desmond Bane at 4,400, likely to still give you around 30 minutes if the game's competitive, but his usage rates dropped a few points with Brooks being back. Jaron Jackson is the same thing he always is. Can play 30 minutes if he stays out of foul trouble. Pretty big if. He would benefit if this game goes small, but the Clippers being so shorthanded makes me think that there's a decent chance it doesn't. Again, especially if Mann is out, but either way, it's a little bit more likely that it doesn't. So I think Jackson looks okay in tournaments, but not anything I'm prioritizing. Steven Adams is kind of interesting to me. Just, again, thinking if Zubats is on the floor more, we have seen Adams playing time increase a bit lately. He's really cheap. But yeah, not going crazy with any of these guys. They just sort of project as good, but not great values across the board.
Yeah, I wish I had more to add here, but Memphis is like one of the more difficult teams to ever get a feel for. And if Ja's going to be 10K on both sides with Dillon Brooks back, it's also a tough pill to swallow. I'll be swallowing it a little bit. I wish I wouldn't have said it like that. It would have been funnier during the Golden State portion of this show, but it's fine. We'll keep it moving. Anything else for Memphis?
No.
This is one of those shows, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
All righty, guys, let's talk a little bit about the presenting. There's the pause for everybody in chat. Let's talk about the presenting sponsor of the show, just how Yahoo wanted me to round them into this. If you're interested in getting 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum and playing on Yahoo, lucky for you, I could help you out there. Check out the link in the description of this video or likely dropped into chat via Nightbot. To qualify, you got to be new to Yahoo. Sign up for an account using that link, deposit, and play. That's all you have to do. Yahoo will send us your name after you play in your first paid contest. We will then reach out to you with a coupon code via email. If you need immediate access, please email support@awesemo.com. You can also get a free $10, which can be used for any Yahoo contest. We have DFS tools and projections designed specifically for Yahoo to give you your best chance at winning. So go check out the link in the description. Get some free Awesemo, get some free money, and use our tools. Thanks, Yahoo. Apologies for that one, by the way, Yahoo. San Antonio Spurs at the Minnesota Timberwolves. Spurs 1.5-point dogs, 218 total. Not a ton of ownership here coming into the San Antonio side. And we got Jake Puddle back. He's 7K on both sites, working on conditioning. Don't get the sense he's going to play enough minutes to matter, but he certainly takes, or I would imagine he takes, Drew Eubanks and Thad Young completely off the table.
Yeah,
Go ahead. No, go for it. Go ahead. I got nothing.
I was gonna say Pirtle being back just ruins a lot of the things here because we, maybe Thaddeus Young is really in the rotation now, but we don't have anything to suggest that he is. He was splitting center minutes with Drew Eubanks. We know before Pirtle got hurt that Young was just rotting on the bench basically. So I'm not, somebody asked earlier if they could play Pirtle and Young in the same lineup. I'm not playing either one, and if I'm playing one, it would be Pirtle because I at least know he's going to step on the floor if he starts. But yeah, I don't have any confidence that Young is getting any sort of meaningful minutes anymore.
Daniel Gafford is active.
Okay, so good. We don't have to play Harrell, I guess. But yeah, I'm not confident that Young is playing much here. He could take minutes from any of Walker, McDermott, Vassell, but Popovich hadn't been inclined to do that previously. I don't know if he will be now. And he's certainly not priced for me to really want to find out. So not looking there, not looking at Eubanks. The McDermott, Vassell, Walker pieces, I think, are still reasonable, tournament flyers, but they're risky too, because not only do you have to have one of those guys actually produce well, but you do have to have Pop not play a bunch of minutes for Thaddeus Young. If Thaddeus Young does play more minutes than we're expecting, that's hurting those guys. So they're still risky. Keldon Johnson should lose some rebounding opportunities with Pirtle back, so that's not great for him. The minutes have been really nice, but still just makes him look kind of like a secondary option to me. Derek White at 5,300 is okay. His production's been not very good this year, though. DeJounte Murray's been great. He's my favorite play from this team, even though he's also $9,800. He's just playing huge minutes. He's playing at a really, really high level. But even that, it's more so I'll be happy whatever Murray I get to, but I'm not really going out of my way to get to him.
Yeah, there's just not a lot here. It's interesting.
It's just like secondary pieces that round out a lineup for me.
Yeah. I wish I had something else to add, but I really don't. And we definitely need to talk about this Minnesota team because there are a bunch of high-end plays here today. Starting it off with Anthony Edwards, one of my favorites of the day, 8,200 on FanDuel, 7,700 on DraftKings. We've got Towns, obviously playable at 9,800 and 10,500. D'Angelo Russell, 7,200 and 7,400. I love all three of these dudes so far. Patrick Beverley is 4,700 on FanDuel, 4,200 on DraftKings, pulling 30+% ownership. Start wherever you want with Minnesota. We can even talk about Jared Vanderbilt too.
Yeah, so Beverley, I guess, just as one of the only good pieces of value tonight. He's been starting. He played about 34 minutes last game. In the 2 games previous, he hadn't played at all in the fourth quarter because of blowouts, but he had played 27 minutes through 3 quarters. So all indications are that we can count on him to just continue getting full starters minutes as long as he avoids foul trouble or anything. So I think he's a really good value. I think he's one of the easier cash pieces right now. I am a little bit hesitant of his ownership just because he does have a ceiling. I don't want to say that he doesn't. He's certainly capable of going and getting 30+ fantasy points. He's played really well this year. But at 4,200, he definitely is one of those guys. He can go get 24, 25 fantasy points where it's okay for his salary, but it's not, single-handedly winning you a slate or anything. So I'm not saying that I necessarily will be underweight to Beverley. I am saying that I think he's one piece where you definitely want to pay a lot of attention to who you have around him. In lineups where you already have a couple of contrarian pieces, Beverley looks great because he's one of the better point per dollar plays on the slate. But in lineups where you already have some chalkier plays, I'm not that scared of getting away from Beverley and, just risking him being someone that I have to have.
How many minutes do you have Beverley in for?
33.
Any concern with the back-to-back?
A little bit, but
not enough to make that anything different.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't really know how I can't do 32 or 33. It's based on the rotations he's playing without any sort of, we're not playing Patrick Beverley for 32 minutes tonight. I don't know how to go much lower than that.
Makes sense to me. I'm going to have a lot of Minnesota today. I really wish Jakob Poeltl was out. That would have made the matchup look significantly better because Poeltl is a fantastic defensive center. Doesn't help.
Yeah, I hadn't even touched on the other guys, but I'm with you. I'm getting to a lot of Minnesota. Towns looks fine. I think he's difficult to get to just because, for one, the value's not great tonight. Paul George plays a more difficult position to fill. Nikola Jokic is a clearly superior option at Towns' position. So Towns is good, but maybe a little bit difficult to get to. But D'Angelo Russell still at this reduced $7,400 price tag, still playing 34, 35 minutes. Anthony Edwards is still playing 38 plus in competitive games. He's not the most efficient, but 29.2% usage rate in the games he's played with Russell still gives you a massive ceiling, and his price is actually falling a little bit. And then you had mentioned Jared Vanderbilt. I think that's a pretty interesting piece. He is projected for 12% ownership. He's dealt with a bunch of foul trouble lately, and you've seen that limit his minutes in his starts. But we got 25 minutes from him last game. If he's playing well and not fouling, there's not really anybody to take minutes from him. Like McDaniels is kind of whatever. Okogie's still out. Taurean Prince has been in and out of the rotation. If Vanderbilt can stay out of foul trouble, you could see him, play even a couple more minutes than we have recently. And he's not a bad per minute guy when he's on the floor.
No, not at all. I got him as a 1 fantasy point per minute guy. So perfectly reasonable at 3,500. Anything else for Minnesota?
Nope.
All righty. 2,400 people, 360 likes. Guys, what do I got to do here? We're bringing the jokes out on this stream. Lighthearted, 6-game slate, bringing you the goods, reacting to Tyler Hero news while it happens on the show. Can we get that number north of 500 immediately? If you're here and if you're planning on sticking around to listen to this bad boy, hit that thumbs up if you can. Let's get over 500, and let's do that as quick as we can.
I just wanted to clarify something on Beverly, because it seems like people in chat maybe heard what they wanted to hear. But Beverly's a very, very good play. If you have a chalkier lineup using somebody in that price range, like a Monty Morris or a Luke Kennard or something like that is lower owned, makes sense, because the chances of Beverly putting up enough raw points that you can't win without him are relatively low. He's still a very good play. So there's no telling people not to play Beverly or anything.
Absolutely. Philly at Denver, 7.5 point dogs for the Philadelphia 76ers, 209 total. Tobias Harris is quite heavily owned on FanDuel, 38% in fact, where he is 7,500. I think that ownership makes a ton of sense. No one on the Sixers is owned more than 8% on DraftKings. Adam, do you know who the highest owned player is for the Sixers right now without looking?
Harris?
George Niang at 8.5, unless we've had an update since then. But even still, the point remains. Everybody's under 10%. Does that make sense?
Yes and no. I think that it makes sense as far as none of these guys really stand out to me on DraftKings. But also, if they hang in this game, somebody's outperforming their salary. Like Tobias Harris and Drummond, they're priced up, but they're not priced up so far that they can't still exceed their salaries. Like Drummond, he only played 12 minutes or something last game. That was a game where the Sixers were just getting smashed. They went small. I'm kind of throwing that one away. You'd gotten 30 to 31 minutes in his couple of games before that, but we've also seen games where he plays well and he gets 34 minutes. I think he's going to get torched by Jokic, but if somehow he doesn't embarrass himself, maybe they'll leave him out there a little bit longer. But point being, if this game played 100 times, there's going to be some games where Drummond easily pays off an $8,200 salary. Same goes for Tobias Harris, who has a near 30% usage rate without Embiid. His rebounding numbers take a hit when he's playing with Drummond, as you would expect. The assist numbers take a hit playing with Tyrese Maxey, but still over a fantasy point per minute guy that, if this game is competitive, is likely to play 36 minutes and is likely to be a big reason it's competitive. Tyrese Maxey, he's expensive, but he's probably going to play 40 minutes. Shake Milton may or may not start tonight. He started last game, but if he starts at 5K, he's likely to play north of 30 minutes. Same goes for Seth Curry at 4,900. Niang, I think, is fine at 3,900. The point being, none of these guys stand out. They all look like if I'm just talking cash and talking optimal lineups, I'm not coming remotely close to any of these guys on DraftKings. But in tournaments, I think there is still upside for literally 7 guys on this team.
I agree. No one on this show is going to be surprised to hear that I really like Tyrese Maxey today. That is largely because of his ownership. He is projected for 2% across both sites. I'm just going to be well over that number for GPPs. He's going to be one of my bigger GPP stands relative to the public, but I will walk him back from the aggressive amount that I do currently have. I'm interested in this team just in general. Anything else for Philly?
I think it's important to kind of just keep rotations and groups in mind. Probably don't want more than 1 or maybe 2 of the Milton, Niang, Korkmaz group. I think Harris, Curry, Maxey all kind of stand by themselves. Drummond, you could kind of throw, like if you wanted, I would say probably either one of Milton, Niang, Korkmaz, or two of Drummond, Niang, Korkmaz, Milton. Just thinking that, if they go small, you could get more minutes from like Korkmaz and Niang, but it's at the expense of Drummond kind of thing.
Big time super chat from Jordan Lockhart that said, get the likes up for these guys. If you dislike or don't want to be here, get out of here. Jordan, I can't advocate for the message that you just sent, but I will say I like it. So I guess I can advocate for it. On the Denver side, let's talk about the best play of the slate today from a raw points perspective. That would be Nikola Jokic. 11,600 on FanDuel, 12,000 on DraftKings, and fully warrants that price tag.
Yeah, completely agree. There's just nothing negative to say here. The matchup's really good. I don't really know what answer Philadelphia possibly has for him. He's too good at everything to really be taken out of a game.
Charles Bassey, baby.
Yeah, we know he's playing without Porter. We know he's playing without Murray. He may or may not be playing without Will Barton, who's gone from doubtful to questionable. Who was supposed to be out for an indefinite amount of time at one point. Oh, really? I hadn't even seen that. I thought I'd seen last night.
That's a quote from Malone.
Clearly I didn't, but
the quote from Malone was like, expected to be out for an extended amount of time.
Yeah.
And now he's questionable. So
I love it. Do you have him in or out tonight?
Out.
Okay. I have him out too, but as far as Jokic goes, it doesn't even really matter. He's not losing much to Will Barton. He's going to look great regardless. Usage rates in the mid 30s, rebounding percentage in the mid 20s, assist percentage is pushing 40%. Just absolutely phenomenal option. It makes it so it's so difficult for me to pay up for anything that isn't Jokic because there's such a gap, in my opinion, between Jokic and the rest of these guys.
Yeah, I have nothing else to add. He is currently the best player in basketball. So I'm going to have him tonight.
And improving.
Yes. Yeah. And getting better. He's having a better season than his MVP season of last year. So let's think about that for a bit. Other Denver Nuggets. Aaron Gordon is pulling the most ownership across both sites. He's 5,100 on FanDuel, 5,300 on DraftKings, about 20% owned. Well, 16% on DK, 29 on FanDuel. We've got Jeff Green around 15% owned. And then we've got Bones Highland at 3,400 on DK, around 15% owned. What are you doing with the rest of Denver?
So the second best play on Denver is not getting ownership, which
Monty Morris.
Yep. Assuming Barton's out. Morris is a Barton dependent play, but he's been a fantasy point per minute guy with Jokic on the floor and Barton, Porter, Murray off since last year. He played 37 minutes last game. I'm not counting on that again tonight, but he's only 4,700. He's likely to play at least 30 to 32 minutes. I have a really hard time not getting to a lot of him at low ownership. And just, hoping Barton's out. If Barton's in, it's not even the end of the world. Like you lose some production because Barton is going to take shots. He's going to handle the ball a bit, but you're still talking about a cheap point guard that's likely to play about 30 minutes. He still averaged 0.91 DraftKings points per minute with Barton on the floor with Murray and Porter off since last season. So it's not like it's a total loss if Barton does end up playing 0.97 DraftKings points per minute when Jokic and Barton are both on the floor. So I really like Monty Morris here, especially if that ownership doesn't move. But several other good pieces as well. Aaron Gordon doesn't really get a bump in terms of production, regardless of who's on the floor. He's just sort of a low usage guy that doesn't do a whole lot of anything, but he does get a bump in playing time with Michael Porter being out. We've been seeing 35 to 36 minutes pretty consistently. He's only 5,300 on DraftKings, so that makes him look like a pretty good value. Bones Highland, he's fine as a value option. I don't think that he's like drastically better than some of the other guys we've talked about. He projects a point or two better for me, but it's still pretty volatile playing time here. We saw a game where he played 23 minutes. We saw the last game where Denver starters pretty much all played a ton and he only played like 10 or 11 minutes. I think he dealt with an injury in there, but just from a rotation standpoint, the starters played a lot more than the bench. He is a good fantasy producer, so I think he's a good value at 3,400. If Barton comes back, I would like to get away from Highland. But I think that Highland, Green are both fine. Gordon looks good. In my opinion, top two plays are Jokic and Morris.
All right. Anything else for Denver?
No.
If you're interested in our college basketball DFS projections, boy, are you in luck. You can get your first week of our projections for just $5 when you use the promo code Coach K. That's one word. That's coach with a K on the end, not in place of the H. In addition to the H. $5, a week's worth of college basketball projections. Adam, you seem to like those college basketball projections.
College football.
Well, you would seem to like those college basketball projections if you were
I used them
using
last
them
year.
at this
I
point.
liked them.
Okay, perfect. That's what I was looking for. I could have swore that you smacked the first college basketball slate, but that was college football on like a Thursday or something like that too.
No, it was Saturday.
Was it really?
Yep.
I can't track anything. Was that when I was gone?
Maybe. Yeah.
Okay. Well, no wonder I don't have any recollection of it. Anyway, use the promo code Coach K to get those projections. Matt Kajeski doing a great job on those bad boys. Offer is valid through Saturday. So if you're going to do it, take advantage of it right now and join Awesemo Plus today. Closing it out. Toronto at Utah, 10.5-point dogs for Toronto in Utah. We know that there's no Precious Achiuwa for this one and no OG Anunoby. Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, Scotty Barnes, all about 20% owned. Gary Trent is 7K on FanDuel, so people aren't getting to him quite as much. No surprises there. Assuming Khem Birch starts, he is the flat minimum at center on DK today, which creates a really interesting dichotomy between he and Nikola Jokic at the absolute top of prices. So we could talk through that, but I think there are 5 legitimate options for Toronto. They will be the 5 guys that likely play. Well, 4 of them are going to probably play like 40 minutes today. And then you and I are about to have a discussion about Chris Boucher. Start wherever you want.
Yeah. So this lineup, I think, is one of the bigger question marks. I'd said earlier I needed Cleveland's lineup. I really would like to know what Toronto's going with, because they could start with Siakam at the 5, slide Svi Mikhailuk or someone else into the starting lineup and be perfectly fine. My guess against Utah is that they're going to go bigger. They're going to start Birch. They're going to, just move everybody up, and that you'll get close to 40 minutes or 48 minutes from Birch and Boucher. I'm not super confident in that. That's just kind of how I'm looking at it right now. If that's the case, Birch at 3K looks like a very good value. Boucher at 3K looks like a good value, albeit riskier in terms of playing time, but also probably a higher ceiling because he's a better fantasy point per minute guy if you happen to run into more minutes. If you get like Mikhailuk sliding into the starting lineup, he becomes a decent value, but nothing special. But it would make Birch a lot riskier. It would make Boucher, I think, borderline, I don't want to say unplayable at 3K, but you have to realize that there's a chance he's not even stepping on the floor, or that he's going to be out there for like 12 minutes. So it would make Boucher just purely like a tournament dice roll, hope for the best type thing. So the starting lineup really matters here. The guys that are essentially unaffected by the starting lineup are Siakam, VanVleet, Barnes, and Trent. These guys should all play 38 to 40 minutes tonight. It's not a very good matchup at Utah, but they are reasonably priced. Siakam at 78 or 7,900 on DraftKings, VanVleet at 8,300, Barnes at 6,700, Trent at 5,900. I think Siakam looks the best to me, followed by Barnes and VanVleet. There's a little bit of a gap before Gary Trent, but anytime guys are going to play 38 to 40 minutes, they are perfectly fine options.
Now I know why you reacted to the Boucher take. I didn't know that he was the flat 3K on DraftKings. He's 4,900 on FanDuel.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So like he never registered to me in any way, shape, or even if I gave him 20 minutes, I don't like, it's whatever at 4,900. Flat 3K is a very different, like I have him I told you I have him at 17 minutes. He came up in my sim at 7% at that mark. Every minute counts a lot there for Chris Boucher at the flat 3K. So now I can see why we were off a bit, because I was just like, I never even looked at DraftKings. I was like, what are you talking about? Like 20 minutes? Like he's clearly not popping. Yeah, very different place. Why is he flat 3K?
I have no idea. I don't know why Birch is either, but I definitely don't know why Boucher is.
Yeah, no, makes no sense to me whatsoever. Do you have anything else? I got a question in chat before, and I want to hit you with it because not that it like needs to get digged into. They asked, who do you think benefits more from a usage perspective with OG out, VanVleet or Siakam? And my thought is just like nobody really, like maybe a little bit to VanVleet, but I don't know how real OG's usage is once we get this team like back in normal and Siakam's there for a while, taking the shots that he wasn't taking when he wasn't there.
I was actually thinking Scotty Barnes.
Okay, that works. Well, the question was actually posed to me as VanVleet or Siakam, so I'm totally fine with the Scotty Barnes answer too.
Yeah, and the reason that I say Barnes is for the same reasons you were saying. I think it's likely that OG actually has a higher usage rate this year than he did last year, but I don't think he is going to maintain 25% with Siakam back. I think he's going to come down, and Scotty Barnes is going to come down. VanVleet's going to hold his, he's, I think, pretty much unaffected. Siakam's going to get his. So to me, it's kind of, are Scotty Barnes and And Gary Trent's going to be the lowest of the group, most likely. So it's kind of like, are Scotty Barnes and OG going to have to split it? Or in this case, OG is out. I think Scotty Barnes probably sees the biggest increase just because he had the most to lose previously, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. That makes a ton of sense to me. All right, let's
I basically
close it out.
projected this. I viewed the usage here pretty similarly to when Siakam was out, because OG had a 25 to 26% usage rate. I think it's pretty it's pretty realistic to me, or logical to me, to just assume that Scotty Barnes goes back to having the usage that he had at the beginning of the year.
Works for me. Closing it out with Utah. Nothing really interesting here for Utah other than Rudy Gay is finally available. On a day like today, though, I imagine he's still getting his sea legs, so I'm not a big Gay guy. But if I'm looking at the rest of Utah, Donovan Mitchell stands out most to me, 8,600 on FanDuel, 8,900 on DraftKings, and then Rudy Gobert, 8,500 and 8,800. They are the two best pieces as far as I'm concerned. The rest of it is sort of a grab bag, as it usually is.
Yeah, Gobert's the top option for me on DraftKings at 8K. The issue, though, is that he plays the same position as Jokic. He plays the same position as Birch, plays the same position as Bam. So still difficult to get there, but I think he's really underpriced. Mitchell still looks good. His price tag's gone up a little bit to 8,900, but he's got a 33% usage rate in the games he's played with Conley. He's got a 26.5% assist percentage. So he looks pretty good. The rest of these guys sort of just last piece in, contrarian type plays for me. Jordan Clarkson's always someone I'm willing to get to off the bench, but I mentioned it on the show this morning. I'm not doing too much to discount him at this point, but I do think Rudy Gay coming back has the potential to take some value away from Jordan Clarkson. It is worth noting that like with Golden State last year, Eric Paschall was a 20% guy, and then he ends up being a 9% guy with Utah this year. So there's a chance that Clarkson just says, screw you, Rudy, and I'm still taking all the shots. But I think there's just given Rudy Gay's stature and all of that, I think there's a chance that you see Clarkson's 30% usage rate drop a couple of points with the more minutes he's playing with Rudy Gay instead of Paschall.
Yeah, that makes some sense. Did you excise Paschall from the rotation?
Yes.
Okay. So did I. I basically just took whatever I had in Paschall's cell and moved it to Rudy Gay. I don't know if that's going to be what's happening, but it seems like that's what's going to happen. Yeah. No, I definitely don't think it matters, at least for today. Do we have anything else here for Utah?
I don't.
All right, let's sum it up. Just favorite plays for today.
Jokic.
Yes.
Times a million. The other Minnesota guys, Beverly, Edwards, Russell, I think look good. There's not a lot of plays I love today.
It's a really difficult slate.
Yeah. I mean, I like playing slates like this, but there's Monty Morris. Forgot to put him out there. Monty Morris in tournaments, absolutely love, especially if Barton is out, but either way. Yeah, Bam looks good. Jokic, Beverly, Morris, Edwards, Russell, I think are top guys for me.
There we go, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to Yahoo Sports for being the presenting sponsor of this show. We're at 666 likes. That sounds ominous. Hit that thumbs up if you had a good time, because I think we just had a pretty fun hour. The least you guys can do is reward us with a little bit of a like button pump. We've got Live Before Lock coming up next. Don't change this stream. Stay right here. It's coming up next. Good luck tonight, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.
What's good, everybody? Welcome to the NBA Live Before Lock show. I'm Dave Lochran at Laffy_D on Twitter. Joining me for the first time since, God, when's the last time I don't know. Greg Ehrenberg at G Ehrenberg DFS. Today's show, of course, presented by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports right here on the Awesemo DFS channel. What's going on, brother? It's good to be back with you.
So the last time we did a show together, it was I can't even remember. Like EMAC had barely started his presidential campaign. It was a whole other lifetime ago. So it's been a minute, and I know you for sure been looking forward to this all day, doing a show with me.
Yeah, man, champing at the bit. That gets people riled up. Absolutely. I saw it on the schedule last night. I said to myself, you know what? I can't wait to do a show with Greg. I heard last one was interesting for sure with Josh and Adam. And you know what? Credit to him. He said, I'm going hatless again. I don't give a shit. I'm going without a hat. I'm going to make it happen. And props to him. Anyway, we're happy to have you guys with us, breaking everything down on tonight's 6-game slate. A ton of top tier. Well, I shouldn't say a ton, but for a 6-gamer, a good amount of top tier players. But hit that thumbs up first if you haven't done so yet. And looks like Josh did a pretty decent job with 754 likes. Now, to be fair, 22 dislikes is I wouldn't even say it's uncharacteristic for Josh. It's just disappointing. But if we can get to 1,000 without one of that, last time what was it? Matt Savoca took his hat off for 1,000 likes.
Dude, I've never seen people go crazier for something with less significance. We were at like 650 likes, and I said, all right, Savoca, how many likes for you to take your hat off? And he was like, 1,000. 30 seconds later, we got all the likes.
You have to look. Dude, when Josh and I did the chip challenge, what was it? I have it back here. The Packy 1 chip challenge. He lost the bet, right? And he had to do it, but I'm a good friend. So I said, if we hit this many likes, we'll do it. And they pour in. These are people that they know where the like button is, Greg. They know where it is. They just, generally speaking, decide not to hit it. So I don't know. I guess we just need people with bad hairlines to take their hats off more often.
Dude, who knew that we're missing out on such a big market in our YouTube channel, that all we needed to do, like here you and I were thinking we need good DFS advice and stuff. And no. We just needed shittier hairlines. We would have had 100,000 subs by now. Exactly.
And Larry, I handled that like a champ. Felt like crushed a gallon of milk, but handled that like a boss. So come on now. Anyway, yeah, let's dive into this, man. We'll go position by position and break everything down. Hopefully you got some good information from the last show. And of course, Adam's deep dive article, free every single day on the homepage. It's the best article you're going to find out there for NBA purposes. EMAC's building blocks article, all of them free each and every day. Kick it off with the point guard position. Patrick Beverley chalk day, Greg?
It's funny. Earlier in the day, I did the strategy show with Adam, and we were talking about Patrick Beverley chalk. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to sweat it too much. There's a whole bunch of guys listed as questionable on the injury report. He looks good now, but by the time we get to the start of the slate, there's going to be better value plays, and we're not going to have to get to Patrick Beverley. And then everybody who was questionable almost ended up getting ruled in. And now I kind of feel obligated to get a bunch of exposure to Patrick Beverley because there's a lack of cheap options on the slate. So yeah, I'm on Patrick Beverley. I didn't want to be, but I don't really see another way to go for cheap. We did just get news that Amir Coffey is going to be starting for the Clippers. So that is another guy who I'm going to have to update my player pool to get exposure to. But, for the most part, there are not that many cheap players to like today.
Yeah, I mean, Amir Coffey, though, you're looking at a guy who is averaging, 8 minutes per game this season? Just, what's he at, like 0.6 fantasy points per minute? I guess how many minutes do you project for a guy like him? He is coming off a 25-minute game where he was unsurprisingly underwhelming.
Yeah, Terrence Mann was out last game. We've got Nick Batum out today, but Coffey is starting. So I think something around the same. Like I give him 26 minutes in terms of his points per minute production. Like you said, it's been poor so far this year. It was poor last year as well. It's not going to look great, but I mean, if I have him at like 18 fantasy points, that'll make him viable relative to the other cheap options on the slate in the context of considering that it's Patrick Beverley chalk night. Patrick Beverley's had like 2 ceiling games the entire season. So there's a situation where Amir Coffey goes out and scores, 18. And also he's not FanDuel viable. It's just going to be DraftKings because of the slightly cheaper salary. But I mean, if I get to coffee at like, let's see. So he's 3,600 on FanDuel. That's going to be a no-go for me. Over on DraftKings, Amir Coffee at the flat min 3,000. Yeah, that'll probably get him into like 15% of my lineups.
And 15 or 50?
No, 15.
Okay. He's minimum salary on Yahoo as well. But one thing to consider about Yahoo, and you know this, there's a lot, like it's a lot easier to go stars and scrubs on Yahoo. So sometimes when you've got these really, really not great players, to put it lightly, and their minimum salary, you can probably find other players that are better than them on any given slate at like $11 or $12 on Yahoo, and kind of forego those bottom barrel guys where you're hoping for, 3/4 fantasy points per minute.
Yeah, and that's all. I mean, also Yahoo tends to have a lot of players that are more mispriced and are.
That's what I'm saying, though. Usually mispriced down.
Yeah, and that's something we don't have we've had the benefit of it on a lot of DraftKings slates recently, where there's been guys out who they just never price up, but they've really changed the pricing algorithm, particularly for this slate on DraftKings, where you look at all of the guys who are stars on the slate, they're super expensive. We've got Jokic is 12,000, Paul George is 11,000, Steph Curry's 11,800, John Morant's 10,000. It's hard to get up to these guys given the cheap players that are available to us today.
So we've seen, and this has been kind of a reoccurring theme recently with Colin Sexton out, we've seen Darius Garland continue to pull a lot of ownership. And I think justifiably so, because one, he's playing 35 plus minutes a night. Two, DraftKings has decided just not to really touch his salary, Greg, which I find interesting in its own right. But he's also going up against a defense that ranks number 1 in defensive rating. So is Garland for you a guy that you're happy to get around the field or over the field on today, coming in at 25% on DraftKings? On FanDuel, highest projected owned player at 36%. I mean, those are some high ownership projections on a guy like him in a tough matchup.
Yeah, so I think on FanDuel, there is reason to look at Darius Garland at 6,000. First of all, have to play Darius Garland in cash games on FanDuel at 6,000. Yeah. But in tournaments, I think there's reason to look at Ricky Rubio at 20% ownership, which is, still somewhat popular, but it's about half the ownership that Darius Garland has, and make that kind of pivot. On DraftKings, they have basically identical ownership, and I just prefer to get to Garland. But on FanDuel, where Garland is projected for 36% ownership and Rubio is projected for 21%, I think there's a pretty natural leverage play there by going to lineups with Rubio as opposed to Garland.
I was just thinking, you never see Matt Savoca without a hat. I once in a while, when I get my hair cut, I'll go like a couple days until I just get lazy again. I don't think I've ever once seen you with a hat. Do you own a hat?
No, we went over this yesterday because that was the other thing, is that people wanted to do, because then it was also after it was like, all right, we got all these likes for Savoca taking off his hat. It was how many likes for Greg to put on a hat, and I just don't own any. I don't have a hat to put on.
Have you never worn hats?
No, never. When I was younger and I had a gigantic Jufro that wouldn't even fit in the, it wouldn't even fit in the Zoom picture. Like my hair would just be coming out.
It was like Kyle from South Park when he takes the hat off.
Yeah, but like even more egregious. Like I have pictures of it. I posted it before of like my middle school ID picture, and I would wear a hat occasionally, but it wasn't a hat that would sit on my head. It would sit on like the top of my hair, like a foot over my head.
That's incredible. We got to get you on, man. You had to at least do one stream with a hat.
Hey, get me in. Oh, by the way, we got news right here. Chetty Osman rolled out, but that was unexpected.
I'll get you an Awesemo hat.
Yeah. Hey, if we get me an Awesemo hat and we get to a certain number of likes, then we'll throw the hat on.
Let's do it. Yeah. Cavs starting Garland, Rubio, Okoro, Wade, and Davis. Is that anything new to you, or is that what you expected?
The starting lineup is expected, except the minutes now have to get reallocated because Chetty Osman's out, because this is already a team that's been pretty thin in the front court. So looking at Cleveland, I'm going to pull up all these guys right now. So here's the full injury report of guys who are out for them right now. Lamar Stevens is out. Colin Sexton's out. Jared Allen's out. Lowry Markkanen is out. And Evan Mobley is out. So in recent games, Chetty Osman has had to pick up a bigger role. And I know he didn't start yesterday and he didn't play a massive amount of minutes, but those are still minutes that have to get allocated to other players. And then you also consider Kevin Love. This is the tail end of a back-to-back. Kevin Love typically doesn't play a ton in these sort of situations. And then you start to say, like, I guess Ed Davis has to play a couple more minutes. Dean Wade might play a ton today. And considering that we're kind of hurting for savings today, I know that Dean Wade is not the best per minute fantasy producer, but he played 38 minutes yesterday, and that was with Cedi Osman in. We could be looking at 40 minutes from Dean Wade today.
And you're not going to need incredible per minute production out of a guy like that if he gets up in the 38, 40 minute range. Like last game, what, he had 11, 5, and 2 with a couple of swipes and 25 fantasy points. That's manageable, especially on a 6-game slate. Let's close out point guard. We already talked about a lot of the chalky options, but on the same Cleveland team, I've got to ask you about Rubio. There's a guy you've taken a stand on in recent days, understandably so, even though some people just couldn't wrap their heads around that, Greg, around the process. Although I totally get where you were going. Rubio is coming in around 25%. D'Angelo Russell around like 19%. But really, Rubio is going to be owned by a quarter of the field.
Yeah, and once again, it's a little different FanDuel versus DraftKings. And I'm curious to see where the ownership ends up on these Cleveland guys now that Cedi Osman's ruled out. But I think on FanDuel, like I was saying before, there's a really good pivot play to be made here by going to Ricky Rubio ahead of Darius Garland just for half the ownership. By the way, we did just get an ownership update. Darius Garland now at 39% on FanDuel, Ricky Rubio at 25% on DraftKings. Rubio is now projected for 26% ownership. Where's Garland at now? Oh, Garland just slightly below at 25%. So for DK purposes, I'd rather just get to Garland, but FanDuel, it's going to be Rubio just because of the price gap. But I still think both of them are pretty viable plays for this slate. I don't think that's problematic ownership at all.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider it problematic. I do want to say, though, are there any other point guards? Because you're going to have a lot of them concentrated at the top among the guys we just talked about. Are there any that aren't getting hyped, that aren't getting a ton of ownership right now at the position that you're looking to get to?
Let's see. So I have to just compare the most recent run of ownership to see where some of these guys have landed.
I can tell you if you want to throw it out there. I got it pulled up right now.
No, it's fine. I've got it here. So I'm overweight to the field on Bones Highland. And I know there's a little bit of concern here because we've got Will Barton's expected to return to the rotation after missing some time. He was listed as, so we've had Will Barton today was listed as probable, doubtful, now questionable, but expected to play as questionable. I still have a little bit of reservations about exactly how healthy Will Barton is going to be. And Bones Highland, when he's gotten on the court, has been super productive for the Denver Nuggets. And as is, it's not like he was playing a whole bunch of minutes. He got hurt in the middle of last game. So let's take that one out of the equation. Games before then, 22 minutes. He scored 22 fantasy points, 21 minutes, 30 fantasy points, 23 minutes, 22 fantasy points. So I'm looking at Bones Highland as a guy only owned in the teens at close to min price on DK as a good guy to try to save some salary with, and also not super popular.
So how in are you on stars and scrubs lineups tonight then? If you're talking about some of these real cheap guys that we're hoping to get mid-20s out of.
Not very, to be honest. I have some exposure to Nikola Jokic. He's my most rostered pay up option in the last run of build I did. I have 30% of Jokic, and that's my most rostered pay up option. Other than that, it's kind of the upper mid tier of the pricing range, getting to guys like Anthony Edwards, getting to Bam Adebayo. So it kind of depends where we're doing the cutoff for what the actual stars are. But at the top end, not very much today, because I really do think a lot of them are overpriced now on DK, and we don't have that many value options I feel that good about. Well,
speaking of Anthony Edwards, if we're talking shooting guard here, we got almost a 30% usage rate on him this season. The peripherals, leave a little bit to be desired, and that's when it comes to Edwards, you're going to need scoring from him. That's pretty clear at this point. But he's getting up a ton of shots. He's playing a ton of minutes, and he will have some games where he just falls into a good amount of peripherals in terms of rebounds and assists. And his price, I think, has come down. I mean, he was 8,400 like a week ago, Greg. If we're just talking about DraftKings, we could get to FanDuel and Yahoo as well, where he is $33. But does that feel like a more reasonable price for a guy like Edwards? Because once you get up into the mid 8Ks, it feels tough to get those ceiling games out of him there.
The usage is so high, though. And by the way, if I was Karl Anthony Towns, I would just be so annoyed in this situation, because you watch some of these games yesterday. I think Patrick Beverley finished with like the same shot attempts as Karl Anthony Towns. D'Lo took more shots. Anthony Edwards took more shots. And there's some plays, like there was that clip that went viral last week where Anthony Edwards is taking a shot, and as he gets the ball at the top of the key, Karl-Anthony Towns just shakes his head, starts walking back on defense because he knows he's not touching the ball in that possession. And the positive, at least for Edwards' standpoint, is he's going to take shots regardless of whether he's efficient or not. A couple of games ago, he shoots just 2 of 11 from the field. Doesn't really prohibit him from taking shots. Last game, 11 of 24. It doesn't matter how, and the game before that, 9 of 22. It doesn't matter how many shots he misses. He's still going to take up somewhere around 30% of the usage. And, we saw a game from him last week where he scored 66 fantasy points. There was games earlier in the year where he scored fantasy points in the mid 40s. So I still think there is upside to Anthony Edwards just because the usage for him is so high. And the matchup is fairly decent against the Spurs today.
I do too. I'm just saying I like him more at 77 than I did it naturally, obviously at 85, where that was a little bit tougher to get to. But I'm saying that's a pretty significant discount from where he was just a few days ago. So, I like that. And you're right. You look at the usage rates for this Minnesota team, and Towns is down like 4% from where he was a year ago. D'Angelo Russell second in usage behind Edwards. So, yeah, it's tough. And we'll talk about center when we get there, but. Actually, D'Angelo Russell's a good one here. You're going to get multi-position eligibility on him on some spots. Are you buying into that? And are you willing to get to the pairing here between guys like Edwards and Russell, or is that a little bit rich for you?
I'm looking through my lineups. I did not pair. I prefer Edwards. I didn't really get any exposure to Russell so far today, especially part of that is with his most recent Cavs news, I'm getting to Darius Garland a little bit more. I'm getting to Ricky Rubio a little bit more because I gave each of them a couple extra minutes. Dean Wade doesn't have shooting guard eligibility on DraftKings, but he's now become one of my favorite value plays on the slate, which feels terrible, but I have him playing 39 minutes today, and that makes him very much in play at his current salary. And then even over on FanDuel, where he's a little more expensive, 4,500, I still want to get to him a bunch there, more so than I thought I would have wanted early in the day, because that Chetty Osman news being out really impacted my lineups more than I would have thought it was going to. But as for D'Lo, part of it also is I like Edwards enough today that I think there's too much negative correlation to really be getting a lot of exposure to both of them. So Russell is going to be a no-go for me.
Victor Cayasso, thank you for the super chat. Says, thanks for all the great content. You guys are amazing. Let's win some money tonight. That's right, man. Appreciate you. Let's do it. Would you wear a cowboy hat or a fedora if we got you one?
Listen, I'm a whore, right? So how many legs are we talking here?
Go ahead.
We got to set the bar pretty high. We got to go for, I don't know. What do you think's a fair number, Lofty? How many likes for me to get?
I mean, I'd wear a cowboy hat for free, honestly, but you don't wear hats. So someone said, Anthony said Lofty would do anything for likes. Around this way, Greg, for money. I'm sorry, he said for money. Around this way, thumbs up or currency in this bitch. No doubt. It's any a shout out on Twitter. If somebody has a big hit and they're in the Awesemo Hall of Fame, maybe that'll be a little incentive. People tweeted Awesemo Hall of Fame, and you can make a request, say this is the apparel that we want to see Greg wearing on the show. I would be into that as well. But yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to go. It's not going to be difficult to get me in a cowboy hat or fedora. I'll put it that way. But it's going to come at a price. I'll do it with you. I don't care. Did you win 40K the other day?
Yeah, Corbin Burns Cy Young yesterday.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, nice. I had it. Which, so during baseball shows this year, and Lofty's not involved in the baseball shows.
No, and I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, so he would know about it. Yeah, Lofty's just committed to doing Thursday night basketball shows with me. But so baseball this year, people were getting so annoyed with me at the amount of times I was bringing up Corbin Burns and telling them to bet Corbin Burns for Cy Young, because I bet him before the season started, and I was betting him like every 2 weeks in the regular season, and it ended up paying off.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations. So I saw somebody say that in chat. I didn't know. That's great. Yeah, you're a big futures guy. I hate betting futures personally, but you've done well on them.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like futures. And actually, a lot of people have told me that I'm dumb for betting futures, but it's like, I don't know. I've made a lot of money on them. I'm not going to, for sure. I'm not going to stop. I know a lot of people consider it to be negative EV just because there's so much more vague on futures versus other bets.
Well, you can't bet the no. So you don't know what the no would look. Yeah.
But to me, I just think there's so many. I think there's so many futures that are just really egregiously mispriced and don't account for news. And by the way, speaking
Daniel
of news,
Gafford, yeah,
Daniel Gafford out. So it's going to be Montrezl Harrell, like out of nowhere. Guys who have switched injury designations. We've seen Will Barton go from probable, questionable, and doubtful all in the same day. Daniel Gafford, he's also gone from questionable, probable to now out. So nearly hitting for the cycle. You got to go from, if you want to hit for the cycle in NBA DFS, it's probable, questionable, doubtful, out, and in all in the same day. We call that the Anthony Davis. It's happened multiple times. Daniel Gafford came close today, but now we've got some value popping up on Washington.
Yeah. One more thing just to throw out there. If you guys are playing DFS and you're making football lineups and don't have time to watch live before lock, you should, if you can. Cordero Patterson is out tonight as well. For those of you multi-sport players, that is huge news for Atlanta. And if those props are still on the board, get your Mike Davis over props, even though that'll fail miserably. Yeah. But it's still the right play. All right. So, and yeah, as news rolls in, we're going to talk about all this. Greg, I mean, we'll go by position, but we absolutely we absolutely have to break down these individual teams when we're getting big news like this. Where else do you go at shooting guard right now?
Yeah, so shooting guard, and by the way, Dean Wade. Some of these are always wonky with now the multi-position eligibility on both DraftKings and FanDuel, but Dean Wade has shooting guard eligibility on FanDuel. He does not on DraftKings. I'm pretty sure he's just, he's small forward on DraftKings, shooting guard, and small forward on FanDuel. So Dean Wade, I think, is a really strong shooting guard play over on FanDuel. Now, talking about some of the DK guys, we've talked about Darius Garland. We talked about Anthony Edwards. Terrence Mann is somebody that I like getting to. And let's see what the most recent ownership on him is. Yeah, only 6% ownership on Terrence Mann. That is a number that I'm pretty heavily overweight to. And I think that maybe the late injury status for Terrence Mann, he missed last game. He was listed as questionable, was upgraded to in, has people off of him. But Nick Batum is out. And even though Amir Coffey's starting, I still think this is going to benefit Terrence Mann in some respect. The price is cheap. We've seen a ceiling out of him. So he's one of my favorite low end plays on the slate at just 6% projected ownership. All
right. So just to back up a second, Greg, for anybody that's jumping in right now, and almost at 925 likes. We're 76 away from 1,000. We're going to cruise there today in the next 35 minutes. The biggest news for anyone just jumping in now, what's the biggest, most recent news we've had and the biggest news on this slate that's going to play a huge role, Greg?
For me, probably Chetty Osman getting ruled out, as dumb as that sounds, because he was somebody I had zero exposure to, but now it's creating just a whole lot of Cavs guys that stand out, whether it be Ed Davis at center, Dean Wade at small forward, a little more minutes going to guys like Darius Garland and Ricky Rubio potentially. So, I mean, these were guys that already the field was getting to a lot in Garland and Rubio, but just solidifies them for me. And then once again, just not a lot of value on the slate. Now there are cheap guys that we could look at on Cleveland, because Cleveland's injury report, not just the Chetty Osman news, but the other guys who are out for Cleveland: Lamar Stevens, Colin Sexton, Jared Allen, Lauri Markkanen, Evan Mobley. Really thin team in Cleveland, so a lot of value there.
Where do you think Montrezl Harrell's ownership ends up at?
Let's see. So
because he's not priced like he's not priced like one of these dirt cheap centers that's getting insane additional run. Like he's 76 on FanDuel, he's 6,200 on DraftKings.
The FanDuel price point, especially because it's a tough matchup against Miami, I don't think people are going to roster him all that much. On DK, so we've seen 2 starts out of Montrezl Harrell this year. One of them, he played 34 minutes and scored 56 fantasy points. The other one, he played 35 minutes and scored 42 fantasy points. So I know the matchup isn't ideal, and his minutes have waned a little bit as of late, but that's also because Gafford was in. Gafford's out now. I don't think it's unreasonable to think we get 34, 35 minutes out of Harrell. And, he's still a guy who scores a fantasy point per minute. So you're looking at 34, 35 fantasy points. It doesn't make him the best value on the slate, but I'd expect that probably gets him to around like 10 to 15% projected ownership on DK.
Yeah. And he's averaging over a 1.25 fantasy points per minute. So yeah, if he's getting that type of run, I think it definitely makes sense. All right, let's see here. Where are we at? Small. You got anything else at shooting guard, or you want to make the pivot here?
Let's see. A lot of the guys we talked about at point guard also have shooting guard eligibility. I think Derek White isn't a bad flyer. I'm still pretty high on Derek White this year. And I know that it hasn't gone his way so far this season, but I don't think the minutes are going anywhere. I don't think he's in danger of losing his starting job. Jakob Poeltl's back in the mix for the Spurs, whatever. I don't think that's going to really impact Derek White too much. But Derek White's just had really terrible efficiency so far this year. And not that he's been the most efficient scorer in the past, but he's shooting 39.9% from the field. He's shooting 30.8% from three. He's shooting 77.8% from the free throw line. These are all numbers well below his career average, and I think they should pick up. Then you also consider the Spurs team doesn't have DeMar DeRozan this year, so everything would make me think that Derek White should be a better fantasy producer this year than he was last year. So he's somebody that, as long as he remains fairly low owned, I'm going to be getting more exposure to in the field.
Take a couple super chats. Thank you, Jordan Klein, producing today's show, for hitting me with those. A. Dean says, what is Patrick Beverley looking at in his DraftKings app picture? Well, now I have to see what you're talking about. There was nothing better than Amir Johnson's. It looked like he had farted and just smelled it. Like, you know, and when a dog smells their fart and it surprises them, you know, that yeah, Patrick Beverley's head, that is odd. I don't think that's a headshot. I think that's a candid shot. All
right, let's see. What is this a picture of? Patrick Beverley. I'm pulling it up. So this is, oh, I know. He's looking at a picture of Amir Johnson farting and smelling his own fart. That's what this is a picture of.
I was thinking of something about Russell Westbrook, but couldn't think of anything good. Thanks, Dean. And then Caleb, Yahoo, all caps. Yahoo, Rubio or Garland, straight up. 6K entry. No, 6K. The entry is not 6K. $10 entry into a 6K baller. Rubio or Garland, straight up. You got salaries at Garland at 26 and then Rubio at 24. So basically the same price.
That is, I have Rubio projected for slightly more wait, so Yahoo, let me double check this.
Rubio is also getting, wow, is that right? Rubio at 31%, Garland at 17%.
All right, then it's Garland pretty easily. If Garland's going to be half the ownership, Ricky Rubio, $24, 32%. And then, like you said, Garland, $26, 17%. So you have to pay $2 more for Garland, but you're getting half the ownership. So that's the way I'm going there.
Yeah, that's a huge discrepancy in ownership for a $2 difference in price point. What are you doing with Isaac Okoro? He's 11 on Yahoo. He's projected for higher than any other small forward on this slate. How much? And then he's getting very little ownership everywhere else.
$11 for Isaac Okoro. You know, it's an issue with Isaac Okoro. Yeah, he's
very good.
He sucks. That's usually something I don't really want to.
We just talked about Amir Coffee, so I have to bring it up.
No, that's fair. I'm getting some exposure to Amir Coffee today, but I wouldn't be playing Amir Coffee over on Yahoo. Isaac Okoro. One thing I will say as a positive for Isaac Okoro is that a lot of his value does come from defensive stats, and he's going to be on the court a ton today. Now that there's no Chetty Osman in the
39 minutes last game, which is crazy.
Yeah, and he got in early foul trouble, or else it could have even been more minutes. And if they get blown out by the Warriors, I wouldn't be shocked if Isaac Okoro plays garbage time either. So for min price or close to min price on Yahoo, I wouldn't have an issue getting to him. I don't know I'd get to him as much as the field is getting to him there. But I think if you're playing cash games on Yahoo, or if you absolutely need somebody at that price point, I wouldn't have an issue with Okoro.
Yeah, it doesn't have. Look, 20 fantasy points in 40 minutes might not be awful. But go ahead.
I was going to say, and also if you're going to compare him, the difference between Isaac Okoro on FanDuel and DK to Yahoo's, he's min price essentially on Yahoo. There's very minimal difference between the $10 and $11 price. On DK, Isaac Okoro is $4,900. On FanDuel, he's $4,300. That's way different compared to the $11 price point on Yahoo.
It's funny, man. Now that FanDuel has MPE, talking about a position like small forward, where you have to play two of them. It's a whole lot less stressful. Like Tobias Harris has small forward eligibility, and by the way, did you ever figure out why they do PFSF? Is it maybe because they're putting their primary or what they assume to be their primary position first?
Well, they guess that stupid website, FanDuel. They're just guessing. They're just like, hey, you know what? This guy's a small forward, power forward. This guy's a power forward, small. They've got Paul Reed as a shooting guard over on FanDuel. He's played all his minutes at like power forward and center. They're just guessing. It's a monkey pressing buttons.
What about Dean Wade then? I mean, we just talked about Okoro. What you mentioned, Dean Wade could be in some of your lineups today. He's getting a little bit of love today.
Yeah. So once again with Dean Wade, I think him and Okoro are going to play a crap ton of minutes now. But Dean Wade, at least on DraftKings, is 4,200. We've got Isaac Okoro at 4,900 on DK. Also, I have Dean Wade projected for more fantasy points. Okoro is pretty reliant on defensive stats. He generally doesn't score very much. I think on FanDuel, Okoro is a little more viable at 4,300, but I'd still rather roster Dean Wade if I had to play one of them. Also, something as I'm running my lineups, I notice Dean Wade, I made a mistake before. I said that he's shooting guard, small forward eligible on FanDuel, but it's power forward, small forward. But the idea that he is eligible in 2 positions and Okoro is only at 1, that just makes it easier to get to Dean Wade on FanDuel.
By the way, I can really appreciate the amount of time you spent decorating your background.
Oh yeah, that one, that Lawrence Taylor picture over there. You
got like a 12 by 18.
Yeah, I've got that. It's actually it's a bigger picture than it looks. It's just the wall is really far away. I've got other pictures here. They've been sitting here for like 6 weeks now. I've just never bothered to put them up.
When did you move in? Like 3-4 months ago?
Maybe even longer at this point. Yeah, I know it's sad, but like, what are you gonna do? I'm lazy when it comes to these things.
I don't think it took quarantine for me to do anything in here. So I've lived here for 4.5 years. So I got you. But,
yeah, and there's plenty of other stuff. Like I've been doing a lot of cleaning and other stuff, like hanging up pictures. That's a nightmare.
Yeah, try hanging up blinds by yourself. That sucks. Like the blackout shades. That sucks, man.
Yeah, I did it with my dad together. He held one side, I held the other side, the blinds in front of me. But yeah, all that stuff sucks. I don't like doing it, so I just don't do it.
Not curtains, blinds. That's the curtains you can do. The blinds suck. I should have just paid somebody to do it, but I was eager. Anyway, hey, if you guys haven't checked out Yahoo yet, we've been talking a lot about it. Some really good salaries over there today. The 50K baller, 10K up top. Also, they've got some sick single game contests as well for football. I've been jumping in a lot of those lately. The Thursday night baller, 25K up top, only $12 to enter 100K prize pool. Before you sign up, if you haven't signed up on Yahoo yet, okay, because the contests just keep getting bigger. There's a nice edge in cash games over there, as Matt Kajeski always tells me before we do these shows. Use the link in our description or the one that our producer Jordan is about to throw into chat. Use that, and all you have to do is sign up, deposit $10 or more, and enter a paid contest. After you do that, they will send your information, your social, your date of birth, everything over to us, and we will steal your identity. No, they'll send your email over to us, and we will give you a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum, $90 value. That's everything on the site: ownership, player projections, top stack tool, boom bust tool, the lineup builder, fantasy cruncher add-on is on there as well. And all these tools built by Awesemo himself. Alex Baker won a lot of money using these tools. So have so many of our subs and the guys over there. So if you want to get in on it, $90 value, free month, Awesemo Plus, not just basketball either, every single sport on the site, including all of the tools that we have for Yahoo, we have all of the tools for Yahoo. Use the link, sign up, deposit $10, play a paid contest. They'll send us your email. And of course, we will hit you up and get you hooked up with that free month. Premium Discord, office hours chat with the pros in there to help you out. All of that stuff for the entire month. Oh, and Yahoo gives you $10 in credit back too. So you're literally paying nothing. So if you haven't signed up yet, perfect opportunity to do it. It's free. And we'd love to have you join us over at Awesemo as well. So it's a win-win for sure.
Do you know about the other giveaway too?
What's the other giveaway?
If you guys like this video, DM me your social security number. Adam Scher will show up at your front door with his haircut and he'll say hello to you. But you have to like the video first. Gotta like the video. Oh man, that would be great. As a matter of fact, Dean Super Chat is saying Adam Scher and then the handshake emoji, Chris Boswell. Everyone thinks he looks like Chris Boswell now. But I don't know what Chris Boswell looks like because that position doesn't count. But no, Chris Boswell. Well, I mean, we're talking about Oh my God, he does look like Chris Boswell.
Oh God, you're gonna make me look this up now.
Yeah. It's Chris Boswell is less of a widow's peak than Adam does, but yeah, he looks like Chris Boswell. Also, I mean, you say kickers don't matter, but we've got a Thursday night football game today, and we know the boss man, Alex Baker. He loves his kickers in Showdown, but
he does.
Yeah, Adam does look like Chris Boswell.
Dude, he looks just like it. Oh my God, that's fantastic. He doesn't have the peak. You're right. But he looks just like him. That's great. Good call, man. Douglas says Butler, Bam, Stack, or Garland and Harrell in tournaments. Greg.
All right, let me pull up the super chat just so
Butler, Bam, and Garland and Harrell. While you pull that up, I just want to once again say thank you to Jordan Lockhart. Hey, getting me one of those hats. Let's win again. Yeah, we got a merch store with some awesome stuff. Good luck to all the members. Pay attention. Great content. Thanks for the content as always. I'm not kidding. I think that's probably the $500 mark of super chats from Jordan just today. So appreciate you, man.
Yeah, I mean, and he could afford it. This guy wins like $500,000 every 3 days in DFS. As for Douglas's question, I prefer Garland and Harrell in tournaments, and I don't know if we have. Let me see if we have a recent run of ownership on Montrezl Harrell, but he's popping up a bunch for me now that I've updated everything, and we currently have Harrell. 22% projected ownership over on DK. FanDuel, we talked about how he's more expensive at 7,600. Less of a priority there, 14% projected own. But yeah, DK at 22%, that's a number I'm overweight too.
Okay. And like I said, stick around after the show coming up. You got Live Before Lock with Alex and Neil, two big-time money makers in the DFS space. Patriots, Atlanta Falcons. Anything you want to talk about at small forward? Anything else, I should say?
It's funny. So many of these players get multi-positional eligibility. I go through. It's like Dean Wade, we talked about. Anthony Edwards, we talked about. Let's see. So Jeff Green, I'm still getting some exposure to. Once again, even with Will Barton back in the picture, I'm still expecting Jeff Green to either start or play at the very least extended minutes off the bench. Because don't forget, we still have Michael Porter Jr. out for the Denver Nuggets. And still, we've seen Jeff Green start each of the last 5 games. So I think Jeff Green's going to start. I know the results have not been there in his last couple of games, but as an added benefit, he remains really cheap. And the minutes are still there for him in the starting role. So the only game that he played limited minutes was the game against the Portland Trailblazers. He played 24, but that game was decided by 30 points. So that's the reason for the limited minutes there. Jeff Green, I still think, plays somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 minutes today, even with Will Barton back. And that's enough for me to want to get to him.
Oh, nice. We hit 66,000 subs today, Greg. That's what's
nice.
Up.
Nice.
That's what's up. Yeah. And El Negro Loco using his free super chat of the month. Loser of my next bet gets a cut from Adam's barber. Those are serious. Those are high stakes. High stakes, to say the least.
I want to get Jordan Klein's old haircut.
Oh yeah, that'd be solid. Jordan's got a thick mane on that head of his, though, so a little different. But hey, Greg, power forward. No one's getting a ton of love, as it has been the case with other positions. Siakam leading the position on DraftKings. You talked about Jeff Green, again, another guy with multi-position eligibility. On FanDuel at power forward, you do have Bam, who's multi-position eligible, and he's getting 35% tonight.
Yeah, so Bam Adebayo, I think he's a really strong play, but 35% the field's already kind of there. So something that I'm kind of in lockstep with, so I don't feel too much differently. Pascal Siakam, I wonder if he's going to end up with less ownership than what he's projected for. I'm currently a little bit overweight to the field on him. So a lot of injuries going on right now for the Toronto Raptors, but the matchup is also abysmal. They're playing in Utah, which is obviously one of the toughest matchups possible. There's also blowout risk because they're 9.5-point underdogs. But here's the positive for Pascal Siakam. OG Anunoby out. Precious Achiuwa out. Yuta Watanabe, less significant, but he's out as well. There's a lot of minutes up for grabs in that front court for the Toronto Raptors. We know they haven't liked to use Chris Boucher all that much this year. And it's also a team that isn't that deep on guys who could take up usage. So Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, if this game stays remotely competitive, I think all of them are going to have to pick up a lot of usage. And Siakam is my primary target of the group.
What's the spread on this right now?
9.5.
Yeah, up to 10 on DK. Okay. So looking at some of these lower owned guys, there's nobody that jumps off the page at you, I don't think, at least right now. And we just had our ownership update 3 minutes ago. We got free content over at Yahoo today too. Ownership rankings are free for NBA, showdown projections for NFL, and ownership projections for NHL. All of that stuff free. You don't need an account or anything. You can just go check it out if you want. What about Aaron Gordon, though? He's been someone that's been kind of a thorn in the sides of those who just keep playing him, not this year specifically, but just kept playing him because he was cheap and he wouldn't get there very often. But he's relatively popular today. You're coming in at a low 5K price point against a Philly defense that is very bad. They're not good right now without Joel Embiid, without Ben Simmons. This is a subpar defense, hands down, and we've seen a lot of that recently, especially in the interior and around the basket. Is Aaron Gordon worth a look today?
Yeah, for sure. $5,300 over on DraftKings. On FanDuel, Aaron Gordon's price is at $5,100, which I also think is a very easy price point to get to. And once again, with Aaron Gordon, the production hasn't really been there for him, but it hasn't been miserable either, and the minutes are there. So that game against Portland, once again, just to reference the Jeff Green stat line from before, Aaron Gordon plays sub 30 minutes in that game because of the blowout, but other games against Dallas last time out, 36 minutes. Against Atlanta, 34, 33 minutes against Indiana, 36 minutes for Miami. It's not like we even need Aaron Gordon to be a points per minute fantasy producer. If we're going to get, 0.8, 0.9 fantasy points from him in 36 minutes, that's going to make him a solid guy to look at. And then, like you said, also the Joel Embiid being out for the Philadelphia 76ers, it's a massive downgrade going to Andre Drummond as the starting center. So Aaron Gordon is somebody who I'm also a little bit overweight to the field on. I don't think that ownership is an issue whatsoever. Right now, projected for 16% ownership on DK in the most recent run of ownership. Over on FanDuel, he's projected for a little bit higher, 26.8%. But still, I think those are both numbers that are fine to be overweight to, considering his price in the matchup.
Draymond Green's kind of doing Draymond Green things. He's averaging 1.08 DraftKings points per minute. They're winning a lot of games in blowout fashion, though. So the minutes are kind of skewed by some of this. If you look at how much run he's been getting, they're winning games by, dude, it's amazing how many games they're just winning by route. But again, today against Cleveland, it's another one where you're not exactly looking at it and going, oh yeah, this is pretty much a lock to stay close. It might, who knows, 9.5 point spread though, pretty low total. Warriors have a good defense. Is Dre in play for you today against this front court of Kansas City, Cleveland? I don't know where that came from. Usually if I screw up like Indiana and Indianapolis, but Kansas City's out of left field.
I didn't get to Draymond Green. One of the reasons is there's a guy priced below him that I have a higher projection for in Jaron Jackson Jr. So I'll talk about him in a second, but I played Draymond Green a lot recently, and I get his minutes have been capped because of blowouts, but the ceiling hasn't really been there for him. He scores the same exact amount of fantasy points every game. It's crazy. If you go to Fantasy Cruncher and look at his box score, there's never an issue. If you were playing a cash game and you need to fill out somebody at the end of your lineup, you just want security, fine, go ahead with Draymond Green. But he has not scored more than 32 fantasy points in a game now since, let's see, I have to scroll back to find this, since October 30th. In every other game, he scores almost exactly 30 fantasy points. Like, it's uncanny. How many fantasy points is Draymond Green going to score? If you guess 30.5, you're probably going to be pretty accurate because that's basically what he does every single day. There's nothing terribly wrong with that, but he just hasn't had enough upside to really want to play him in tournaments.
He's remarkably consistent, though.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
It really is. Jordan says in chat, our producer, Jordan, damn, Laffy, going weak on the thumbs up. Eric would have had 1K. First of all, we've been at 1K for a while. Second of all, he would have had 1K because I would have left him 1,000 likes after I did the deeper dive. So yeah. CJB, thanks for the super chat. Which trio do you like better, Bam and Draymond, or D'Angelo Russell? Bam, Draymond, and Russell, Greg. Okay. Or Jokic, Dean Wade, and Rubio. So one of those he's just going top tier and then a punt and then a mid-range. The other one he's going, kind of higher end, but not Jokic level, with then two mid-range guys in Russell and Dre.
So it is Jokic, Dean Wade, and Rubio for me. Like I said, I really like Dean Wade today, and see, I'm sure I'm going to regret this at the end of the day, but Dean Wade's one of my most rostered players just because I think he's going to play somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 minutes. And I don't care that he's a crap points per minute fantasy producer. If you give me 0.6, 0.7 fantasy points per minute in the amount of minutes he played yesterday, then he's going to end up looking pretty good at that price point.
Sean Raza. Okay. It's a Z, not an S, but that's okay. Is Max Strus a GPP FanDuel play?
Not for me, no.
No? Okay.
No. You know what's weird? I'm almost positive Sean asked about, left a super chat and asked about Max Strus the other day also. Maybe I'm just having deja vu, but we definitely got a super chat about Max Strus the other day, and I think it came from Ben, from Sean.
He also sent us the same one like 10 minutes ago, and I hadn't got around to it yet. Maybe that's where it's coming from. Maybe you saw
that's
that.
Also, yeah, or I'm just an idiot. All these things are very distinct possibilities.
I guarantee the one day Max Strus blows up and has a huge game, this dude's winning. Sean Raza's winning a lot of money. So.
Hey, could be.
All right. Anybody else you want to hit on? Any lower owned guys at power forward? We got about 13 minutes till lock, one position to go, making some decent timing here.
Yeah, so I'll bring up Jaron Jackson Jr. because I referenced him just a second ago when we were talking about Draymond Green. So Jaron Jackson Jr. project for 9% ownership over on FanDuel in the last run. Over on DK's project for 11% ownership. I've got a soft spot for Jaron Jackson Jr. and I was really, really high on him coming out of college, and not that should still be impacting my decision making at this point in his career, but I've always thought he's had talent, and when he stays out of foul trouble, he has massive fantasy upside. Now, here's the issue. He doesn't stay out of foul trouble all that often. This is a guy who's a very hands-on defender and does end up getting into foul trouble a decent amount. He's one of the highest foul per minute rates in the league. But still, you look at the kind of fantasy production he could deliver. Last time out against the Houston Rockets, blowouts, so he only plays 24 minutes. He scored 38 fantasy points in those minutes. And we've seen games from him like that recently. A week ago against Charlotte, another game where he only played 30 minutes because I believe he got into some early foul trouble in that game, still ends up scoring 38 fantasy points. So whenever he's lower owned, I do like getting to Jaron Jackson. And then on the flip side, whenever there's slates where Jaron Jackson's super popular, I generally tend to stay away from him just because of the foul risk. But I think he's somebody who's kind of getting lost in the shuffle in the mid-range.
Oh, yeah, there is. I'd seen someone mention this in chat. Yeah. What is that? 5,800 out of 9,500 in the Thursday Night Football baller right now. Oh, the NBA one, 3,800 entries out of 5,600 in the $10. That's solid. 50K up top or 50K prize pool with 11 minutes to go. Yeah, you might, I don't want to jinx it, but I think it's going to be tough to fill 1,800 spots in 11 minutes. It's worth jumping in on that. All right, Greg, let's talk about centers. Before we do, Jordan, should I wish, why didn't you Hall of Fame your 40K futures win? You should have.
I posted it on Twitter. The issue is it's over the course of like 20 bets I placed on him. So the most on on one individual bet was like 7,500, but like it was a lot of betting tickets that individually won like
gotcha
2,800, 3,000.
It would have taken
like
up
that.
The whole PowerPoint.
Yeah, something like that. I did post on, I guess we could at the Hall of Fame on it though, because I did post it on Twitter.
We should, for sure. Anyway, Awesemo Hall of Fame, and then we'll take your questions. We'll talk center. I'll do this quickly, but I want to shout out everybody that rides with Awesemo, rocks the avatar, went to awesemo.com/avatar, tweeted us at Awesemo HOF with the wins, got their free month of Awesemo, $90 value. Very simple. You win, top 3, field of 5,000 or more, tweet us at Awesemo Hall of Fame, include Greg or myself in that as well. Just put the avatar wherever, Awesemo or Yahoo, DraftKings, FanDuel, doesn't matter. Jordan Lockhart, another monster win, $100,000 this guy yesterday, continues to crush. Congratulations, man. You really needed that last one. Pickens, first place. That's a solid lineup. Love to see it. Small stakes doesn't matter. Large, high stakes, small stakes, it's all the same. You tweet us, we'll get you hooked up with that free month. Sean's on, one of our guys behind the scenes and a well-known, great DFS player, $44,000. And then our boy T.O. Deck. Greg, back-to-back Sunday night and Monday Night Football, this guy bings. That's amazing.
Dude, it was crazy. It was to the point too where, so he added both of us on Sunday night and he was like, hey, big win. And then I still saw that tweet come up again on the next day. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm still getting likes from the one before. And then I realized after like, oh shit, he just won the same tournament 2 slates in a row.
I know. Alex tweeted him on the first Sunday night one. He tweeted Monday night and said back to back. And I was like, I don't see a tweet. I thought Alex just thought it was the wrong, like thought it was a new one, right? And just mixed it up. And then the next day, there it was. So yeah, congrats to all you guys. Tweet us, hit us up. We're happy to brag for you. And man, all the love and interaction you get on the Twitterverse, it's fun. Oh, and the free month is pretty sweet as well. All right, Greg, let's talk about the center position, and then we'll take some questions here. Still got a decent amount of time. Montrezl Harrell is on DraftKings, and we kind of talked about this. This is where we saw it going, getting the most ownership at his position at 6,200. On FanDuel at 76, he's around 13%. But that's a pretty big difference in price point from site to site.
Yeah, so FanDuel, I do find him a little bit difficult to get to, especially because you compare him to some of the guys priced around him. And Harrell's at 7,600. I have Bam Adebayo projected for more fantasy points at 8,300. Rudy Gobert at 85. On DK, I find him impossible to avoid. He's one of my favorite overall plays on DraftKings. FanDuel at 7,600. I just think it's about an accurate price, though.
How about who's your favorite high-priced player today? Because Jokic is always going to get some ownership.
It's Jokic for me, but now that we have Harrell viable at center, Jokic is still my most rostered pay-up player, but I only have him in 15% of my lineups now. So I don't really have very many lineups where I'm going all the way to the top. It's a lot of lineups that are in the mid-range where I'm getting to guys like Harrell, Siakam, talked about Anthony Edwards earlier, Jaron Jackson Jr., just a lot of guys in that kind of 6K, 7K, 8K range. That's really where a lot of my lineups are ending up being built.
Hey, Bones Highland is questionable now. He was probable. Now he's considered a game time decision.
Was he changed from probable though, or is he just probable in a game time decision?
No, he was. When I looked, when we were discussing him, he was probable.
But he could still be probable in a game time decision. If he was downgraded to questionable, I'm saying
I think he was.
Okay. Yeah. If he's downgraded to questionable, then I feel less certain about him if that's the case for sure.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. Just throwing that one out there. So outside of guys like Jokic and Harrell, we did talk a little bit about Bam on FanDuel with multi-position eligibility. He's getting a ton of ownership. What about at 8,400 on DraftKings?
I love him. I have no problem getting to him at all. It would be certainly nice if he had power forward eligibility in addition to the center eligibility. So I'm getting to more exposure to Rudy Gobert than Bam. I'm getting to more exposure to Montrezl Harrell, but he's still up there for me. I think that he's somebody who at 8,400, there's plenty of upside. And look at his recent games, even though he's been having some sort of knee issues. Other games, just played against the Lakers, scored 58 fantasy points. Game against Clippers, scored 48 fantasy points. Once again, Bam's had some issues with foul trouble at times this year that's limited his playing time, but when he's been on the court, he's been crushing this year. So I don't have any issue with Bam Adebayo. I think he's even a little bit underpriced at 8,400.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you whatsoever. And yeah, with Highland, I don't know. I just got something that said he was. Usually you don't get any alerts if a guy is like legitimately probable. Yeah, they're going to have the Q tag because there isn't a P tag anymore. But I don't know. It seems like he was potentially downgraded. It's worth keeping an eye on at least. Greg, couple of super chats to get to. So close out the center position so everyone can get these lineups in. And yes, Tim, Yahoo's not close to filling. He said, I would suggest you guys put some lineups in. If you haven't signed up there, though, use the link because you'd be crazy not to do it. It's free and you get a free month. So use our link for sure. Anybody else at center that you like, maybe low owned or value?
I think we've talked about most of the guys that are important to me at this point. I've got some lineups of Jared Vanderbilt as a flyer. He's been starting for the Timberwolves and he's really cheap. His minutes were down a little bit in the last couple of games, but he continues to get in foul trouble. They try to get him to play bigger minutes. But then you get, he's on the court yesterday and he picks up 2 fouls 5 minutes into the game. Same issue the game before. He picks up 5 fouls, only able to play 23 minutes. So if you're looking just to go off the board at center, I think that Vanderbilt is viable. But for the most part, Jaron Jackson Jr. center eligibility, Jokic, Siakam, Adebayo, Gobert, Harrell, kind of a lot of guys we've already talked about.
No Ed Davis love?
A little bit, but no, not really. I thought I was going to get to him more, but there was just ultimately more players I like, particularly in the mid-range. Also, the fact that he's 3,600, not mint price anymore, that makes a difference as well.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for cheap centers, though, because it's just so easy to fall in the fantasy points. All right, let's take a couple of questions. And by the way, thanks to everybody that's hung out with us and hit that thumbs up button. Takes us a long way. You might think I'm lying. I'm not, though. YouTube, when it comes to being fickle, they want to see engagement and interaction, and you guys are definitely really good about that. All right, here we got one. Sean said, yeah, I said the same thing about Bembry being in the optimal last time. Arcathelza, how many minutes are you giving to Valentine?
Let's see. Denzel Valentine. So I ultimately didn't get exposure to Valentine. I understand the reasoning for it, though, because once again, all of those guys that are out for Cleveland today. But ultimately, I have to look at what happened yesterday where they had a bunch of guys out, and he only ended up playing 11 minutes. And that's really a head scratch for me. The 2 games before, he played 22 and 23 minutes. So you'd think just based on that, like, all right, there's going to have to be more minutes available for Denzel Valentine. But the fact that he only played 11 minutes yesterday, so I don't feel great about his minutes load today.
Okay, looking for some of our members here with some questions. I saw a bunch of them earlier, and now I can't find any. Jordan, if you have any that you see, here's what Mike says. Anyone else getting a fuck ton of Caleb Martin? You getting a ton of Caleb Martin?
No, I'm not getting to a little bit of them even. It's so, I mean, there's different adjectives to describe our exposure to Caleb Martin, but yeah, mine fuck ton is not the amount that I'm getting of them.
Who's still asked thoughts on Cat? I guess that we talked about him a lot earlier, just in terms of seeing lower usage this year. Where are you at on Cat?
Yeah, I thought earlier in the day he'd be somebody who I might end up with exposure to just based on that of all the guys that are stars that are priced up on this slate, Cat's one that still is a reasonable price point. But if I had the salary, I just went up to Jokic, or else I kind of went to that mid-range. I played a lot of guys like Bam Adebayo, Rudy Gobert, and Montrezl Harrell for cheaper.
Siakam or Gobert, asked Travis.
Gobert.
Okay. Dylan Brooks or Scotty Barnes?
That is Barnes for me. God, I hate Dylan Brooks. I don't want to rant about this with 2 minutes left in the show. He's one of my least favorite players. And like, I get that he plays really hard on defense, so people like him, but he legitimately thinks he's the best player on the Grizzlies. And it really bugs me that he's starting to take up more usage than Ja Morant in recent games.
You think he's better? You don't think he's as good as Ja?
No, I know he thinks he's like he thinks he's like 3 times as good though. Like Dylan Brooks shows up every game. Dylan Brooks is going to be confused when he's not voted All-Star starter.
Wasn't he turning the ball over like 20 times a game last year? No, it was the foul trouble with Dylan Brooks. Dude couldn't stay out of foul trouble. He's fouling out every game. Oh, here's a good one. Because this question's been coming up a lot, so we can close the show with this. Where are you at on Kevin Love? I've seen his name pop up a ton today, Greg.
I didn't roster him. I understand that people might look at him and think, oh, look, Kevin Love, all these injuries in the front court, guys out for Cleveland. Surely Kevin Love has to play extended minutes. I don't know if that's the case. He rarely plays that much in the tail end of back-to-backs. And what do you think is the most amount of minutes he's played this entire year, Lofty?
Kevin Love?
Yeah.
God. 20. Okay, so natural answer for me, first thing that comes to mind would be 24.
So the answer is 24. You hit it right on the head. This is also the tail end of a back-to-back. So I'm supposed to believe this guy who also has played 1 game now in the last 3 weeks, that they're going to play on the tail end of a back-to-back. Kevin Love, who they've been notoriously cautious with, they're just going to go out and play him 30 minutes. And it's not like he's inexpensive either. He has a little bit of a salary to him. I'd feel different if he was, $4,000 or something. He's $6,600 over on DraftKings. On FanDuel, Kevin Love is $5,600. So once again, we're not talking about some guy who's a crazy value play, somebody who's likely playing limited minutes in mid-tier pricing range.
What's odd is you're not enthusiastic about his 20% three-point shooting this year.
Nah, not at all. He's
shooting 20% from 3.
That's not great, especially because that used to be all he did for a little while.
I know. And he's a decent rebounder, but yeah, that's not great. Hey, follow Greg at G Ehrenberg, DFS, myself at Laffy_D. Shout out your boy Jordan Klein on the way out. This your last show, Jordan, or are you doing live? You're doing okay. And Alex Baker, Awesemo himself, Neil Orfield, Millie Maker winner, that guy, huh? They're coming up very shortly. NFL live before lock, Patriots on the road, touchdown favorites against the Falcons. These disgusting primetime games are actually an insane amount of fun for Showdown. So hopefully we'll see you guys over there and be back here tomorrow for the deeper. What's up? We're going right now. Go. Peace. Are we simultaneous streams? I thought we didn't